One of the greatest joys in my life has been selling chairs for the last year and a half, the SMITE Maxonomic chair. And one of the greatest joys in my life has been sitting, just in general. But now it's been made even better by the SMITE Maxonomic chair that I have at home. And the third joy in my life has been handing off selling duties to my man Mifflin himself, the SMITE Maxonomic chair.
Where is this shot?
Needforseat.com. I think that's Paul's camera. That does seem like Paul's camera.
Okay.
And I have to imagine he's up and preparing. The only thing that gets me out of my chair is the fact that I have to come into work. Otherwise, I'm sitting in my SMITE Maxonomic chair at home. And if that doesn't sell it, I'm sure Miff will find a way to do so. Miff, I'm happy to have you on the desk with me here, my friend, as we move into Group B in a very important matchup.
Yeah, I'm pumped for this one, but you kind of set me up, so I do have to sell the chairs. Use code SMITEMAX. It gets you some stuff.
You didn't have to go back to it.
Well, you said that I have to, so I did.
You're right. Fair enough. All right. Somehow, Miff and I on the desk, man, we just butt heads constantly. This is a very important matchup in Group B. One of two back-to-back games. Again, two separate broadcasts. The last game of the day here on Friday will be the Titans versus the Warriors, and then the first match of the day will be the Titans versus the Scarabs. And so, Miff, the Titans really in these next two games that we'll see on broadcast have the ability to just change the way that things look for Group B, for better or for worse for the Tartarus Titans, because a lot of the talk of a three-way tie, head-to-head, plus-minus, things like that, all hinges on just the Titans winning out at this point. And so the Oni Warriors have a chance to make things interesting here with a win over the Titans. And again, I'll reiterate what I said to Agro, even if the Oni Warriors lose, if you're seeing a future where head-to-head and plus-minus are important, doing yourself a favor and winning a closer set, 3-1 or 3-2, will go a long way for this Warriors team.
Completely agree. I'm excited for this set because I think it has a lot of implications. I know that the Warriors fell down to the Scarabs a little bit earlier on in the group stages, but I'm not sure that was completely indicative of how well they can play, the potential that they do have.
Yeah.
So I think this is definitely one to keep your eyes on. A nice heat check for the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, Nika, in the three games that the Solar Scarabs won against the Oni Warriors, the first time we saw these two teams play in Group B, Nika wasn't having like a great time, and it was no fault of his own, right? It was just this composition that the Solar Scarabs built where Cthulhu was just getting shut down on cooldown. That said, in the games that the Oni Warriors won, Nika had a great game, and one of them was on this Mulan. I don't know if that's going to be a mainstay here in the solo lane, Miff, but we did see kind of vintage Nika carry style out of the solo lane, and he's going to be a massive part of a win here today if the Oni Warriors are able to find it.
Yeah, it felt like when the Oni Warriors were finding their wins, it was when Nika decided to take fate into his own hands. High-pressure selections, gods like Mulan. I think he was off to like an 8-1 start just about immediately in that match and leverages it incredibly well. There's a reason that the highest tier of ranked queues are named after Nika, is because he's capable of the highest level of play as well. I think if the Oni Warriors want to see more continued success, you got to play through your stars. And for the Oni Warriors, that's Nika.
Yeah, Nika's played a decent variety of picks, played Cthulhu, Mulan, Artio in the last few games that we've seen. The Mulan maybe being the most intriguing. But the Oni Warriors squad, when they're able to rally around this solo lane, things just feel a little bit more comfortable. I think Hugo Fred's going to have to stand out here today. You got a tough matchup against Layers, who's just playing out of his mind at the moment. But it just makes life easier, doesn't it, when you have somebody in the solo lane who's able to stabilize at least. Just keep that side of the map somewhat even better if Nika's able to get off the chain a little bit like he did on that Mulan. Nika joins me for the pregame interview right here and right now. Nika, first and foremost, thanks for sitting down with me. Second of all, Group B is in such a unique spot now where the Titans have only won their one game. They got a couple matchups here this weekend. You got a couple matchups to look forward to. Even though you lost to the Scarabs, it feels like you did yourself a favor. If stuff comes down to head-to-head, plus-minus, things like that, you only have that one map minus. Do you still, and do the Oni Warriors still see a pretty clear path forward into being one of the top three teams from this group moving on to the playoffs?
I mean, yeah, it's in our hands, right? Like if we're able to just play clean and win our sets, then there's no worries. So most of all, we just have to. I think the biggest issue we had last set was drafting. If we clean that stuff up and just play well, I mean, we can beat anyone. We know it.
Yeah, you having nightmares about Cthulhu into triple chin size and win.
I'm having nightmares of the Hades, man. That's the real one.
That's right. We're thinking about the Hades. Look, this Titans team, they've made themselves one of the scariest teams in the league at the moment. What's your take on why this Titans team is playing so well right now? Maybe what does it take for you guys to get the win today?
I think the biggest change they've had since Layers is I think that like they have a lot clearer game plan and like they've like set their own meta, and the way you have to draft against Titans is kind of like different to other teams. So if we got the draft strong, it's going to be a lot harder than like other teams. And individually, they're all great players as well. They've like really stepped it up since the change.
Yeah,
so
how about
not,
Benji?
Not many faults, I'd say.
Is that a matchup that you enjoy? You and Benji up there in the solo lane?
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that like Benji's always been one of the best solo laners. So I mean, I always enjoyed playing against him. I mean, I guess I don't know what both of us can be playing, but maybe we'll have some interesting lanes. We'll have to wait and see.
Maybe a little Mulan. Look, you don't have to say yes or no,
Maybe.
but I liked you on Mulan. I think the fans did as well. Nick, I'll let you go get ready, and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
I like that, and that's a good mindset, I think, from Nika to have here moving forward against Benji. Benji has had some incredible performances alongside the rest of his teammates, and it feels like Benji has filled that solo lane role that I said that, like, at least if they're able just to get their feet underneath themselves and provide a stable, a concrete sort of force on one side of the map, the team is better off for it. And it feels like that's what Benji's done. It's been a lot of Nike here recently. Cthulhu and Artio. And talk about just stable, right? Those are picks I think that kind of define that. And Benji's looked good on those picks.
Yeah, Benji, I would almost argue, is like a pillar of the team fight of the Tartarus Titans.
Yeah.
Once he decides to rotate out, the entirety of the Titans kind of rally around him. That's why we see these kind of compositions that really leverage his pick. If it's a Cthulhu paired up with an Aphrodite, all of a sudden you've got an unkillable Cthulhu in the front of the team fight. Paired up with a Morrigan, you got two Benjis reigning inside of the team fight as well.
KDA
Yeah, he's gross.
All right.
He's just gross.
I will contextualize that.
Please.
In his last 6 games, Benji has died 4 times.
Yeah. Okay.
4 total times in the last 6 games for Benji. So a little spooky, I think, for teams having to go up against this. But again, you know, Nika, it feels like he's been great for this Oni Warriors team. But shutting down Benji is not something that's easy to do. Dying 4 times in 6 games, I think, absolutely indicative of that. And if he is able to remain a pillar myth, I like the way you word that, you feel like it just makes life easier for Layers, for Paul, for Aurora, Cyclone Spin. Paul feels like he's been playing more facilitator-style roles here recently. And I think the Nike pick specifically, if you want to start to hammer down on picks and bans a little bit, that's something I imagine to be fought over a little bit here because Benji's just looked too good.
Yeah, and you know what? Both of these solo laners, Benji and Nika, have similar potential to carry games. I think that
similar,
it's
right?
a different methodology, though. Benji likes to rotate out. He wants to be involved in the team fight. He waits till like that 15, 16 level mark, and then he starts to make his mark known, and that's how he carries. He brings his presence to the team fight. Whereas Nika, I think, when he's really hitting the ground running, Nika is bullying you in lane. He's stealing blue buffs on his own. He's playing things like the Mulan, these incredible, just aggressive lane picks, and that's where he finds his lead. So I think it makes it a very clear solo lane matchup, and that the Tartarus Titans, Benji in particular, is going to be withstanding, perhaps. Maybe he does find a solo kill, maybe he doesn't. Solo laners don't generally get those, but I don't think that's exactly what Benji's looking for. It's more so, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to keep Nika occupied, and I'm going to get into the team fight. Whereas Nika, I think he really wants to find those solo kills. That's kind of the method that he likes to take.
You know what I noticed, Miff, is that all of the Oni Warriors players that we have cameras on are playing from their bedroom, whereas 3/5 of the Tartarus Titans are playing from a kitchen of some sort. I wonder if that's going to play into our matchup here today. Might be. This guy on your screen, though, I think Vote absolutely worthy of a conversation. And you pair that with a conversation around Dardes, just make it the carries of this Oni Warriors team. The kind of eclectic picks, I think, have been important for Dardes specifically. Eclectic may be too heavy of a word to use, but the Discordias, the hi-rez, that really feels like when this Oni Warriors team has felt the most comfortable. You look at a couple picks for Vote that have really worked, Izanami, Ular in the past. Little things like that have been good looks for Vote. And so I wonder if picks and bans for Game 1 will start to mirror a little bit of that. And then picks and bans for Game number 1, we will find ourselves some answers. But I think I want to continue the conversation around Dardes maybe specifically. And if this Oni Warriors team feels Like, they need to give him the Discordia, give him the Hera, give him the Morrigan, because that's maybe when they've looked their best.
I think that is one way back in. You can build a draft around those picks and facilitate your mid laner. But the only Warriors, as Mika said during the interview, I think P's and B's are really where we struggled. That's the reason we lost up against the Solar Scarabs. So we could be looking at a very distinct shift up in how they decide to play this game. Maybe they prioritize picks a little bit differently in the top 3. Maybe we see entirely new drafts from the Oni Warriors. So I think game 1 is going to be our data collection. And that's not just for us on the desk, but it's also going to be data collection for both of these two teams. In a best-of-5 set, that's really where you get to shine your ability to adapt in these longer engagements, in these longer sets here. So game 1 always has a little bit less weight on it, but it's nice to find a little bit of a lead. I know that Agger likes to have the conversation that game 2 is the most important. I still think game 1 pretty important. Just our friend Mo meant him. You can pick it up early on.
That's my joke.
No, I said it.
Did you hear that earlier on the desk?
I said it, though.
Just now. You said my joke, but, you know, still tracks, still counts. You're right. The adaptation, the sort of storylines that build in a 5-game set, something that the Oni Warriors already have experience with. The Oni Warriors going all 5 against the Solar Scarabs in a loss in this group last weekend when we saw these matches played. Oni Warriors had to show some flexibility. But then I think the concern for the Oni Warriors was that, you know, games 1 and 2, the Scarabs controlled you in the pick ban phase. Games 3 and 4, the Oni Warriors were able to draft better around it. But then in game 5, the Oni Warriors fell back to the same issues that they were facing in game number 1. And so that is a trend I think you need to follow along with here as well. The Tartarus Titans are going to throw Paul something that is all but a facilitator. Facilitator of damage, I suppose, in this Morrigan pick. And on the flip side, Neoma gets something a little bit interesting, and that's the Sylvanas Ola run lane for the Oni Warriors. Is that a good what or a bad what or a confused what?
It's confusion. All right, well, I'm going to do a blitz round. We're going to round up what we've seen so far. The Tartarus Titans have banned out Izanami, Serket, Odin. The Oni Warriors take out Hell, Artio, and Camazotz. That has left available a lot of very high-value picks. And when I'm thinking of Guardians, Sylvanas isn't the initial, right? I'm thinking of the Gebs, and I'm thinking of the Terras.
Yeah, but
that goes by the wayside. I'm thinking of the Cthulhu's as well, and this is the Tartarus Titans win condition, by the way.
Especially with the Morrigan locked in, you have to assume a Cthulhu is in their mind, right? Yeah. So are you surprised that the Oni, if you're hellbent on picking this Olarun, are you surprised that the Oni Warriors didn't also get Cthulhu Olarun? Do you think that would have made more sense than leaving Cthulhu and Morrigan open? Because it feels like every team fight now is just a Paul transformation into Cthulhu and 2 Cthulhus running through the sanctified field.
Yeah, I think if I'm in the Oni Warriors position in that second pick spot, I'm not going Sylvanas Olarun. I'm going Terra Sylvanas. If you really want the Sylvanas, I'm going Terra Geb. Maybe something along those lines. Now, you probably want to dedicate one of your bans towards that pick because you have to be concerned about it from the Tartarus Titans, so maybe they are able to absorb a ban there. But this is a very interesting draft. It seems like the answer to the Cthulhu is Achilles. You've got decent shred potential from Olarun. Stop it. The Execute is what I'm talking about, by the way. But this is a curious draft, to say the least. I'm so surprised about the priority order so far. And it's just, I don't know. Now you've banned out Kali, so maybe the answer that the Solar Scarabs have come up with isn't quite there as well. The Oni Warriors, I feel like they said that their issue was the drafting phase, and then they immediately turn around and give the Tartarus Titans every single piece that they want. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, it does seem interesting, doesn't it? Yamoja feels pretty good for the Tartarus Titans here as well. And I like the wherewithal from the Titans. You ban out the Kali here because you think back to the Solar Scarabs and the answers that they had to this Cthulhu last weekend, and it was a triple chin size composition. Kali was at the forefront of that, even though it wouldn't be Scream playing it, it'd be Cubo Fred. That was still an answer to the Cthulhu, especially 2 of them. But Mifflin, now you're starting to see some of what the other answers might be for Cthulhu. You got Achilles, his Execute. You got Nemesis with the ultimate there to shred some of those protections away. So you're at least seeing where the mindset is from the Oni Warriors here. I'm still just nervous about how uncomfortable maybe this Olarun is going to start to be down the stretch. With the round out of the draft, though, the Tartarus Titans complete what looks like to be a scary composition with an Erlang Shen and a Hachiman.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure already for the Tartarus Titans to leverage in the early game. Hachiman incredibly safe, can be left alone on an island in the long lane. Erlang Shen should be able to help out throughout the early, make sure that this Morgan doesn't get accosted throughout the early, kind of make your 3v3 a little bit stronger towards the center of the map. But with this Nemesis lock-in, the Oni Warriors have opened themselves up to the opportunity of just camping solo lane fully. They just can sit there and make sure that this Cthulhu struggles throughout the laning phase. You've got the execute to finish off some of those kills. So that is one way in, and one way to deal with Cthulhu is to just make sure that he isn't allowed to be that late game paragon of CC in your team fight. And that said, if you're putting that much emphasis in the solo lane, it opens up your long lane to free farm. I am going to assume that it is Oleron headed for the long lane with Neith in mid, just because Oleron is so much safer there. But this is a high execution draft from the Oni Warriors. This draft demands excellence, nearly perfection in the team fight, whereas the Tartarus Titans, their draft is easy. I won't often say that, but double Cthulhu is easy. Morgan, not an easy god, but we're not worried about the Morgan. She's going to stealth in, hit a stun, and then turn into Cthulhu.
You can like pre-hover your change,
You can just
right?
press 4 twice.
You just press 4 twice,
Pop,
and you're
pop.
going to be Cthulhu every single time. So then that leaves some conversation, I think, around Neith specifically. I mean, you're going to assume this is a mid lane pick. It's something that the Valkyries have had some success with this year. Do you think specifically into a Morgan Cthulhu composition, and maybe specifically that World Weaver ultimate, do you think that's going to be able to find value here for Dardes out of mid?
If the strategy is to camp solo lane, and that's the only assumption I've got, that's the only way I could think the Oni Warriors want to pilot this draft throughout the early, Neith in mid, incredibly strong for that. The global ultimate going to act as a stun as well as a good burst of damage. You're able to strip defense. With Nemesis's ultimate, drop him low. Achilles should be able to finish off the majority of these kills, as well as Neith just kind of has a decent matchup into the Morrigan. If you land Spirit Arrow, you can immediately drop Unravel. That'll more often than not just kind of get rid of the stealth from the Morrigan. If you go towards Bluestone as well, that dot damage means that you really can't utilize the stealth there either. But up against Erlang Shen, when you've got such a one-note disengage like backflip, pretty easy for a jungler to chase you out.
Look, we've talked about Dardes and how some of the weirder picks have been when the Oni Warriors look good. Maybe this is just the next in a long line of less than standard picks for Dardes in the mid lane. This one big, heavy Group B implications on the line. Titans, Oni Warriors, game 1 with J-Mac and Aggro.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave and Mifflin. A big set indeed. I think it's important to highlight that here. The Tartarus Titans, they go back to a draft that they pioneered here right at the start of Phase 3, and they get to play it here yet again. It's J-Mac, Aggro, and Billy today as our observer. No Doug, taking a nice little well-deserved day off.
Well-deserved day off for Doug, so we've got Billy on the spectator, which should be a good time. As Tyler just said in my ear, unfortunate. Well said, Tyler. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Look, the Warriors draft, when I look at it, you know, I don't think that they won the drafting phase, but I don't think they were unprepared for what the Titans were going to pick. You know, they knew they were going to have to deal with Cthulhu. They knew they were going to have to deal with the Morrigan. They've picked gods like Nemesis and you know, a Hunter and Neith, even though she doesn't normally build chin size. Maybe we see a chins out of Dardes this game. And you've got options to deal with this Cthulhu. You've got an Achilles as well. I think all of those are good. My concern is really, though, about this Yamoja. Because all of these counters look really good. You know, all these options look really good. But who's getting out of Yamoja wall? Literally Dardes. That is it. That's the only way. That's the only player who has a way out of this Yamoja wall if it's placed properly. So you're going to need Phantom, and if you have Phantom, that means you don't have Blink for Nika or for Neil. You know, it just messes with your whole game plan. So I think this Yamoja is what I'm looking at.
Paul taking a good bit of poke here from Dardes, that Spirit Arrow. Connecting and a blink in from Cuvo. Fred, turnaround stun, missed out of Paul. Dashing from Cuvo, gets the Aegis out of Paul. Another basics needed, but he can't find it. Gets under the tower just in time. So Paul does get a squeak by. Layers sat back and watched as mid laner was getting poked back there. But nice little shot back with the pin. Make sure to keep Dardes and Cuvo at bay, but that sets up mid pressure, at least at these mid harpies, for at least Cuvo to take one and maybe fight back for the second one.
Really good little back step there from Cuvo to stay out of range of that stun. So you get the Aegis out from Paul early. Means it should be a pretty easy all-in onto this, the Morrigan, because doesn't have CC immunity in the kit. You've got a Neith mid. You know, everyone thinks about firing this World Weaver to the side lanes, and obviously that's where you get a ton of value from it. But when your mid laner has no beads and no CC immunity,
If I'm Dardes, I'm gonna hit 5 and I'm gonna go, yo, Fred, come here, please, because I'm just gonna slam her. And what does she do against it? There's not a lot of options.
He's with a Yo Fred, is your blink up? Cool. All right, let's kill this mid laner, hopefully. Some pressure in this dual lane by Neil and Vote, keeping Aurora and Cyclone at the back end of the tower. Layers will rotate back into mid to alleviate some of the pressure on Paul that he's had put. And Benji on this Cthulhu, we didn't see it really looked at all in the first set. Neither team picked it, neither team banned it. But now we're seeing it right back here in the second set, and the team to kind of bring this god right back here in the forefront on the Tartarus Titans.
Benji very comfortable on this god, obviously, but worth noting that he doesn't have a lot of help coming right away. Eventually, Layers will make his way over, but we'll see what the game plan is overall here for the Warriors if they want to try and camp this solo lane, because if I'm playing Neath mid, I'm not really that interested in ulting the Cthulhu because I'm not sure we kill him, even with my ultimate. You know, Cthulhu is just not one of those gods that you have an easy time taking down no matter what, even as soon as they hit level 5. So I think that this Neath ultimate should probably be heading more towards Cyclone Spin and towards Aurora and towards Layers. I don't think that the World Weaver can make the biggest difference because it doesn't do that much damage early. It's more about the CC, and Benji has damage mitigation anyways, so that damage even goes down further from where it normally would be, and he's going to be CC immune for a long period with that Descent into Madness. So we'll see how effective this World Weaver can really be.
As far as the starter items go for some of these players, Dardes going with the Leather Cowl early for some of the MP5 sustain in mid, a little bit of attack speed to help them out. The Warriors Axe on both sides of the solo lane, maybe a little interesting. We saw kind of a rise of Sigil pop up in the last week of group stage, but this time both of them going back to the tried and true Axe. Even the support role, we are still seeing a little bit of back and forth between this Benevolence and this Sentinel's Gift. And even over in the jungle here, maybe a little bit more of the interesting part on me here is we do see the Mannequin Scepter still make a return for Layers.
Yeah, Erlong Shen just does so much of his damage with the autos. You just want that kill pressure early that you get. It's a nice ball back.
Aurora got him with the Riptide, but Vote's got an ult of his own to try and save his life. Ult had a Cyclone to immune the slow coming through, but with Neilma on the rotation, Vote will make it out. Quick response back to the ult out of Aurora to keep Vote alive.
Yeah, really well played by Vote, knowing he has to go to Neil, but he still loses his ultimate, and Aurora and Cyclone are very happy to trade 2 ultimates for 1 because Vote's ultimate is such a long cooldown. So you just win that trade by nature of your ultimate cooldowns. Well played by Aurora, just boops himself forward, then bumps Vote back straight into a River's Rebuke. That was some Yamoja mastery right there from Aurora.
Can I just say, it's also one of the more satisfying ability sounds in the game is when you get bopped back by Riptide, especially in the recent like summertime skin, just a bloop, bloop that pops out. Great little sound effect there. But 5 minutes in, Tartarus Titans and Oni Warriors here, dead even, no kills on the board. And honestly, in the last couple of Titans games that we've had here, it's been a very low kill count in the early games.
Remember the beginning of the year, this was kind of how this team operated. They didn't really go aggressive early. They wanted to go late. That was kind of their team identity at that point, and we'll have to wait and see what the go button really becomes. But I think the Titans do scale really well into this game. I mean, Erlong Shen falls off, Nemesis gets very good, but I think that's a winnable matchup for Layers if he just times the CC so he can break that Retribution shield really easily from Cubo Fred. You know, Yamoja scales so well. I think she outscales Sylvanas by a pretty considerable margin. Olarun outscales Hachiman, but Hachi's still a late game ADC, so he's pretty good there. I'd obviously rather have Cthulhu and the Morrigan over Achilles and the Neath. So
Vote, no ultimate, a blink in from Layers. The banner drops in, and a World Weaver to try and stop him, but it doesn't stop him fast enough. Vote falls down for first blood, and the Tartarus Titans put themselves on the board here 6 minutes in, and who better to give it to than one of their hard carries for their team in Layers.
Love the way that they played that. I mean, just you get the ultimate earlier, and then we cash in on that investment. And look, before Vote even respawns, Sanctified Field is back up. So they really made sure they have that timer ready to go, and they set up an easy kill. And now this is where you start to get kind of waterfalled on if you're Vote, because, okay, I lost my ultimate, but I still got my beads. They gank again. All right, I beads, but now I'll have my ultimate. And if the Warriors, if the Titans want to keep on executing this game plan, then Vote will use the ult, and then won't have beads, and so he may die in that scenario, or at least he won't have ult anymore, and then the cycle kind of continues to repeat. So good pressure from the Titans. They do a great job getting the ultimate in the first place, and then they actually go and follow up on getting that ultimate out, which is sometimes a step that teams forget.
Potential invade here by the blue buff. Benji and Layers will step up to face 3 of the Oni Warriors. The Mire drops down, but Benji won't find anybody with it. Blue buff does get stolen away by Nika, and Ultimate collapsed onto Layers. He'll use his own to turn around and get some of that health back after the timer goes through. So they make it out. Blue buff does get stolen away by the Warriors. One thing I'll pose towards you here, Aggro, I'm looking at some pretty decent sustain on both sides of the board. But kind of my big question here is, where do the Tartarus Titans really kind of slot their anti-heal?
Yeah, it's probably just going to have to be some defensive options, you know, Contagion, Pestilence, and Ankh potentially for them. I do think anti-heal is going to be important up against the Warriors, because otherwise the Sylvanas Wisps become pretty difficult. Even the Consecrate heal on Ola runs 3 ends up being a little bit problematic, and of course Vote's going to be building lifesteal, so would definitely prefer. I mean, Layers will probably get a Toxic Blade. I think that's fine. You know, it's a solid, cheap item for him that gives him some of that anti-heal. But you're right in pointing out that neither Paul nor Cyclone apply anti-heal super well. I think you can build Divine on the Morrigan. Flat Pen works really well on her because she's trying to one-tap backline anyways.
Well, Vote again in danger. No beads, but an ultimate. River's Rebuke by Aurora, but it's just Aurora up here, and Vote will hold on to the ult. Does get double stunned down. No beads to his name, and an ultimate out of Cyclone Spin just puts him down. No use of the ultimate from Vote. Means he falls down here. Second blood now to the Tartarus Titans, and maybe a response out of the Warriors on a rotation towards Layers.
Yeah, this is just the Ola run treatment, man. This is what happens. You just get killed by Yemoja, and that's why I was saying earlier, yeah, you got options for the Cthulhu and the second Cthulhu, but how about the one Yemoja? Because I think that's going to cause you more problems, and so far it has, at least for Vote, on that left-hand side. And he is going to get tankier. You know, he's going to get Stone of Fall, and that'll give him a lot of mitigation and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, eventually they're going to have to team fight 5-on-5, and he might be tankier, but there's going to be a lot of people slamming him with buttons whenever he's in between the rivers. So that's not going to be an easy place for him to be.
Cyclone starting up with the Leather Cowl and then going towards Devourer's Gauntlet's got 50 stacks online there, so he'll have some very early sustain in these battles. But again, the blue buff has been the priority for the Oni Warriors to steal away. They don't do so here, but they get a pull on Layers. And with the ultimate after on Neil Ma, just needs a little bit of help back for Layers. And he holds on to his ultimate and does manage to make it out there. A lot of commit from the Warriors, and they come up empty-handed.
Yeah, I thought Nika was going to be able to fire off that ultimate, but maybe thought that he was just dead anyways. It was close for sure, but that bit of healing coming from Aurora ends up really mattering. The mitigations from the 9 turns blessing as well coming up big, but that was a great coordinated play from the Warriors. Fire off the World Weaver. We know Layers doesn't have beads, doesn't have CC immunity. Pull him in, knock him up. Loved all that. Just a good Riptide, a good Mending Waters from Aurora, and Nika not being close enough to fire off that Fatal Strike make the difference.
And Layers gets to keep his ultimate. Didn't even have beads to begin with. He started with Blink as his relic, so they don't lose anything in that engagement here. The Tartarus Titans can go for a little bit of a reset now. The blue buff was secured, so Benji holds that. And the Tartarus Titans hold about 1,000 gold lead up here 10 minutes in. Not a whole lot, but it's all been a very steady pace by them. Even about 2,000 experience, give or take, to their name up here over the Oni Warriors. Just a little shy into the game. Again, slow burn by this team. Some of the Titans have been doing a lot in these last few weeks, as you talked about previously, something they've been really working on a lot, really throughout the entirety of the season.
But they have done a good job of showing up on the defense. You know, Aurora's been aggressive on the left-hand side, netted them 2 kills on Vote, and now he comes over and protects on this right-hand side. He attack, but he also protect, you see, and that's the big thing for the Titans now, is making sure that they aren't, you know, we feel like we outscale, so we can play it nice and slow, but that doesn't mean we have to just farm back camps for 11 minutes. You know, we can just pick we're just a little bit more selective with how we pick our fights, and they pick good fights on left, get a couple kills for it. They pick good defensive fights on right in defending the buff. They pull Pyromancer, get that. They got Greater Scorpion on that side. I think the Titans have been playing really, really well so far, 11 and a half minutes in.
Again, back to the blue buff for Cuvo Fred. It's like a broken record for the Oni Warriors, but this time they do manage to take that one away from Benji and keep it off of him. Look, you went with the he attack, he protect, but there is a third part to that. I mean, what's the third part in the instance of Aurora here? Is it just he heal like heck?
Yeah, that'll work for me.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
so heal like heck for the Yemoja. 11 minutes in, a Lotus Crown now finished up, and a Gauntlet of Thieves. On the other side of the board here, Neilma went for the Lotus Crown right away, and now going in towards some of that magical defense, maybe a Heart Ward Amulet for that first item for Neil.
Could also be a Bulwark. A lot of magical damage on the other side, but have to figure it's going to be Bulwark anyway. It's just so efficient there in that second slot. You get an obscene amount of magical protection from it. Just so much, and then plus the shield, plus the health. Bulwark definitely one of the premier tank items right now. Speaking of itemization, we were talking about Layers probably picking up a Toxic Blade, but it's actually Cuvo who has prioritized it earlier. Excuse me, that's in the second slot. He picks up Toxic Blade, whereas Layers goes Chins, kind of the old Cherio build. But I wonder if Layers is going to be picking it up third. I feel like he probably will.
I mean, you're kind of going, opposites here. You're talking about how, Cuvo and Dardes could be the ones going Chin size and Layers would be the one getting Toxic, but it's completely flipped the script here, at least for now. It is an Executioner by Dardes for his second item immediately after the Transcendence, so getting a little bit of extra attack speed and some of that protection shred that item offers to go towards some of these tankier targets.
Yeah, I like it up against the Cthulhus that you're going to have to face, but
Gold
the
Fury.
Warriors, yeah, not interested in taking any objective fights quite yet. The Warriors have been single-minded. We are only fighting around blue buffs. We will not fight you on the left-hand side or on any neutral objectives. It will only be on blues.
We will not fight you mid lane, Sam. We will not fight you right lane, Sam. It'll only be that blue buff. I don't know where I was going with that. I was trying to make a Sam I Am reference, the one fish, two fish kind of thing, but it kind of fell through.
I was getting there.
Cuvo, again, like I said, broken record. Blue buff is up. I'm here. That is just the mentality that Cuvo, Fred, and Nika have on this right side of the map. But even Paul has started to sniff this one out. He'll rotate over with Benji and dash in from the Cthulhu.
Nice.
A double pin out of Layers and Descent into Madness from Benji as he commits a lot of damage over towards Nika. The beads help him out for just a little while, and they'll be able to walk away with a threat of Paul standing by. It doesn't seem the Warriors want to commit too hard towards this Cthulhu.
You defend your blue, you get the beads from Nika. I mean, that's a nice play there between Layers and Benji. Layers with that double pin over the wall, and Benji, as soon as he sees that land, knows that it's go time, that he's going to be able to get some defensive cooldowns out from the Warriors in exchange for that ultimate. Does, only had 20% CDR because didn't pick up the blue until afterwards, so it is a fairly long cooldown on that Descent into Madness, so maybe you could kill him with the World Weaver now, but he's kind of got double physical prot between the breastplate and the Mystical Mail, and Dardes only has pen if he's autoing you, not if he's firing off a World Weaver across the map.
Layers hunting around to see if he can find anybody, but Dardes and Neil on the other side of the jungle. Instead, he'll just pick up these mid-harpies that the Titans have been so incessant on making sure that they pick up. Double stun out of Aurora in the mid lane, make that another stun against Dardes, so 3 stuns for the price of 2. Gets them in a little bit of damage here. The Layers is sticking around on top of this ward. He's covered by 2. No place for him to really stand to try and go for a gank against Nika. And not going to really be able to, as Nika is sitting pretty deep back on that tier 1 tower. Has some of that physical defense online via the Mystical Mail and a Blackthorn Hammer to give him just a ton of extra health.
Yeah, he's really, really tanky from HP right now. He doesn't have any magical protection really, though, so that's maybe somewhere that the Titans could abuse. I mean, Aurora doing pretty solid damage. We saw it there in the mid lane. Paul hasn't really been involved in any fights quite yet. He's got less than 500 player damage 15 minutes in, but does now have double flat pen, Divine Ruin included, so that goes into what we were just talking about with the anti-heal discussion. We'll see how much damage Paul's able to put out, but so far the Titans probably pretty happy with the pace of this game. Like we covered, I think they scale a little bit better into the later stages. Cyclone's got a 2-level lead. Paul's got a level lead in mid, so your backline's nice and ahead, and your support is also 2 levels up. So pretty powerful position right now for the Titans.
Well, everybody going maybe opposite of expectations here. You're thinking maybe a Toxic Blade, third item out of Layers. Instead, it's going to be a Wing Blade, another item within that same lineage of the items, but instead it's going to be the one that grants you a little bit of slow immunity when you do get hit by a slow. Here, we'll give them a nice extra bit of health, some crowd control reduction, which is something that really everybody is a little bit happy on making sure that you get. That's why we've been seeing a lot of popularity with that Stone of Fall. If you can get that 20% CCR on that item, super potent for some of these mages.
Yeah, I mean, Wingblade's so good up against a Nemesis, flat out. I mean, that's just one of the critical pickups up against it.
World Weaver?
Yeah, here it comes.
World Weaver dropped in, but it was on to Cyclone in the mid lane. It will get his ultimate out, but not his relics. Instead, it'll just be a reset for the Titans. They'll start up over by the Pyromancer, and they've got this awkward 3-2 split here in this mid and jungle.
Still, they've got total pressure right now on this Pyromancer. And again, the Titans just take another objective without any sort of contest whatsoever from the Warriors. And it starts to beg the question, where will they draw the line? You know, is it on this Primal Fury that's coming up in just a few seconds? Or Is it on Fire Giant only? Are they only interested in defending Phoenixes? Like, where do the Warriors feel like they're going to actually be strong? Because right now, you know, you can tell yourself, oh, we'll be strong enough whenever Vote gets his 3rd item, or when Dardes finishes his 3rd item. But by the time, when you're behind and you're just giving all these objectives away, by the time you're hitting your 3rd item, they might be getting close to their 4th. And then, yeah, your character's pretty strong, but they're still stronger. So you have to really be careful in how you tread that line of we aren't strong enough to defend this yet, but we will be this time. You still can't just not be present in the in-between moments.
And if you end up waiting too long, kind of taking a page out of Mifflin's book here, if you wait too long, you're just not going to be able to fight back at any point.
Right.
But over here on this left side, Fury is about to respawn. Keep your eyes there. The Warriors gave it up last time with no contest whatsoever. They didn't even look at the Fury. I don't even think they had a ward in that pit to know that it happened until the sound cue went through. But now that it's back up, Tartarus Titans, they start rotating a couple of players over there, Cyclone and Layers. But this time Neil is ready to go just in case. But the Primal Fury already started up by the Titans, already down to half health.
Neil going to come in, does have Blink available.
Aurora going in, it's a Blink ult from Neil, catches 3, the World Weaver hits Cyclone Spin, but some quick healing out of Aurora keeps him up. A pull in by Neil is good, but now Neil is stuck in the middle of 3. Ultimate out of Cuvo is not enough to save, and even with the Sanctified Fields out, Vote may not be as safe as he once thought, as Paul uses his ultimate to get that Cthulhu transformation and slowly separate this team fight.
But the Warriors did stop the Titans from doing an objective for the very first time this game. It costs them a lot. You know, Neil's life, 4 ultimates in order to do so, but at the end of the day, they stopped him at least once.
Well, they're going to delay it at the very least. Primal Fury again, and the crits are slamming through by Cyclone Spin. Primal Fury down. The Titans do secure it. Thought maybe that Nika got in there with that shield slam, but no, it will be the Tartarus Titans getting another objective and pushing that gold lead up to 5,000 here, just shy of 20 minutes.
And look, the Warriors at least that time throw their hat in the ring. They step up, they force the Titans to use cooldowns. You know, Layers uses his beads, a couple of ultimates used by the Titans as well. But the Titans knowing just, hey, we're plenty strong on these objectives. We've got an Erlong Shen. He just DPS's objectives so well with that mannequins. We can just play around our Layers and let him tank it up, and we'll just try and out-secure. It's really a coin flip for this Titans team, as they don't have great secure in general, but still end up doing enough to get the job done and secure their 2nd Fury of the game.
If I may say here, Aggro, I'm a little concerned for the Warriors, not just in how little they've been playing around some of these objectives, but how low the anti-heal is on their side. Sure, they've got the Toxic Blade out of Cuvo Fred and then a Pestilence that gets picked up by Nika. But there's no Cursed Daunt coming out here to try and deal with Aurora, who's really just been sitting in the back line in a lot of these team fights and just throwing out those heals all willy-nilly. What kind of answer more do we need to see out of the only Warriors to try and answer to some of that sustain?
I mean, at this point, I think it's too late. The Warriors can't. I mean, there's no one's building Divine. That would only be Neil. So that probably won't work. Vote's certainly not going to build it. You could, I guess, get Toxic Blade for Vote, but that wouldn't feel particularly good. So I don't really think we're not seeing a Brawlers coming out of Dardes based on his build. I think that this is just what you got now if you're the Oni Warriors, and that healing will certainly be a problem for Aurora, but also no Phantom up against this ultimate, so I think Aurora is going to be a problem in multiple ways here for the Warriors.
Will be a Thorns by Benji. Aurora does get picked in by the Sylvanas, but all the damage is returned right back at Neil. He loses a good chunk of his health just by the poke that comes out of Cyclone and Layers here. Benji sitting around the jungle, just trying to zone Nika out, and a push up towards this tier 1 tower. It could be under fire here very shortly once this minion wave pops in. Aurora's might be willing to tank it up, but Paul is the one who's playing zone duty on this Morrigan, making sure to try and keep Cuvo Fred out.
Love the way that Paul's playing it right now, playing it like that true assassin, not showing himself on the map.
River's Rebuke from Aurora, but that's just to secure the tier 1 tower for the Tartarus Titans. They'll grab that and add another 500 gold to their pockets, and now they've got their prize. They all go ahead and back away, or maybe at least not Cyclone. He'll sit around in the mist for just a little while, clear out the mid camps. It's a World Weaver on the carry yet again, but he's still got that ultimate to get himself out nice and easy. Now it's just Aurora who might have to worry. He does have a Riptide, but it ends up being Nico who takes the Riptide first. A quick pop out. Aurora down to a quarter health. The execute could come through from Nika, but it's got to be body blocked down. It doesn't. Nika manages to sneak through and picks up the first kill of the fight. Layers and Cyclone down under half the execute out of Nika. Doesn't find anybody this time. It's a transformation out of Benji into that madness to try and zone them away and keep the rest of his team alive with the Sanctified Fields. That's a disengage out of the Warriors.
Benji just shuts the door. It looked like the Warriors were going to be able to keep going for more, but Benji just transforms right in front of his weak back line, and the Warriors know they don't have the muscle power to punch through that ulting Cthulhu. And they were right to back up because Paul was in prime position to come in and play absolute cleanup crew on that fight. But good discipline from the Warriors. They get a clean pick onto Aurora. They force him to use his beads. His ult was already down after that mid-tier 1 siege. That was a little bit of an overcommit there from Aurora in order to, I don't know that he really needed to drop River's Rebuke in order to just get a tier 1. I think you get so much value from that ultimate up against what the Warriors have that maybe being a little bit more picky with how you're using it could be the call. But, if the Titans use it and then get out, no one's really concerned about it. So it's really just a credit to the Warriors for punishing Aurora for using that important cooldown.
And all that while, since Paul didn't join that fight, he pushed up that mid wave to get it towards the tier 2. Didn't get any damage that way, but then rotated all the way towards the left side of the map and does take the tier 2 in the dual lane. So out of all of that, they net 2 tier 1 towers. They lose just Aurora and a few relics because of all that. And all ultimates are just about to be right back up and online. Benji and Boat, the only ones without theirs just yet. And that gold lead still sitting around that 5K, 5,500 mark, teetering kind of back and forth.
Might be time for the Warriors to get ready for these 5-on-5s, and they have not shown the capability of actually killing a Cthulhu quite yet, let alone 2 that you're going to be seeing in the midst of this team fight. So that's definitely a concern for the Warriors, but, they are getting there. They've got Chin size done for Dardes, of course. You got an Odysseus bow as well, so even if you're just slamming autos into the Cthulhu, that bounce damage from the Odie bow will help you in the course of a team fight. Looks like Chins is almost done for Fred, since he shouldn't be getting another executioner. So getting closer to the right tools, but again, the Titans just forcing them to come in before they want to.
Benji and Aurora trying to play the gatekeeper because once again the Titans have gone for another objective. This time the Oni Fury, picked up by the Tartarus Titans, gets them a little more gold, but gets them some of those enhanced minions to start walking down some of these lanes. More than anything, clear it off, get themselves set up for the next Fury that will set to spawn. The Oni Warriors will start making their way over towards this Fire Giant. They might try and go for a pull here, or maybe at least just try and establish some ward control as they do drop the Titans ward that was sitting inside the pit. And they'll all start to posture up around it, all 5 of the Warriors ready to go.
The Warriors have to group at some point, but now Layers has Mannequin's Mace. He's upgraded his starter. Look at all the upgraded starters on the side of the Tartarus Titans. The Warriors just don't have that type of firepower quite yet. All 5 members of the Titans have upgraded their starter and are approaching some of their final items. I mean, Paul nearly done with the Magi's, and then his build will be complete. No percent pen for Paul, which is something that, obviously I don't love, but on the Morrigan, it's the most defensible because he doesn't want to be hitting tanks ever. Only backline.
Fire Giant down to half health. The Titans have been starting this one up all by themselves. Benji goes up in the Descent of Madness and a River's Rebuke to lock 3 inside the Sanctified Fields to try and help them out. But Benji is just tearing through the backline. Neil uses his ult but only finds Layers, and Cuvo is losing the fight up against Paul, who also transforms into a Cthulhu of his own. You had a problem with one, but now the second one has come through and is ripping through the backline. Paul grabs one and will dive under the tier 2 tower to try and take the others, while Layer picks up Dardes, and Neil is doing his best to keep him and Vote alive. Paul doesn't have enough to take them out, but the Tartarus Titans take out 2 of the Warriors that can now go towards this fire.
Man, close but no cigar. Benji able to clean up Nika as well, and these double Cthulhus just doing too much work. No, they didn't even come close to dying. Benji still very healthy. Paul very healthy throughout that entire dive, and the Warriors tried to take the fight to the non-big members of the Titans. They were hitting Aurora and Layers and Cyclone, but the front line just too staunch there from the Tartarus Titans. And a good River's Rebuke from Aurora. Exactly the problem I was worried about. The Warriors just become fish in a barrel, and that Cthulhu just started shooting.
With the Fire Giant down, it's now a push up the right-hand side. Tier 2 tower stands no chance against the Tartarus Titans. They strip away Tier 1, get the Fire Giant, take Tier 2, and everybody starts going back to base to start finishing up some of these builds. Paul picks up a Potion of Power alongside that Magi's Cloak that you were talking about earlier. Serrated Edge for Layers finishes out his build, and a Mantle of Discord out of Benji. If he was already tough to kill, we'll add a few more all-prots to this man's name and some CC immunity if you do manage to get that Cthulhu low.
It's a lot to ask at this point because, I mean, Benji went Divine as a pure damage item here on this Cthulhu, and he just won't get punished for it. And it's really good in those scenarios where you're trying to kill Neil and Vote like Paul was. That Divine made a big difference in nearly actually being able to kill through the healing of Oleron and Sylvanas. So it's just the Warriors, I feel like the way we saw that team fight go down is how every team fight is going to go down in this game. You know, how can you separate them? How can you break them up? Because otherwise, I just don't think you can win a 5-on-5.
Well, fight in the jungle goes south for the Warriors. How will their Phoenix defense come through here? Left side tier 2 also goes down. 2.5 minutes left on the Fire Giant buff for the Tartarus Titans. They got a couple of minions here. They're waiting for their opportunity to jump in. Paul sitting way far back for his opportunity to strike. A pull out of Neil just off the mark, but Aurora goes in. Rivers Rebuke catches 3 in the Riptide, holds everybody in place. Neil's the one who takes the brunt of the damage, but everybody on the Warriors are fine for now.
Everyone's fine, and the Phoenix is fine as well. I mean, that was a good Rivers Rebuke and Riptide combo there from Aurora. The Titans just never pulled the trigger. I mean, Benji couldn't ever blink in, was constantly put in combat. And because there's no, there's tier 2 was still up, there was no one pushing mid. I liked that call from the Titans, kind of along the same lines of what I was just talking about. We can't lose 5-on-5s. So why split up? Why 4-1 them when we could just try and 5-on-5? But the whole team wasn't on the same page. Or either Aurora pulled the trigger early or Layers and Benji didn't get the memo.
Well, Paul was fishing for a red buff, but he comes up empty-handed, as that one's still on cooldown. Meanwhile, the rest of the team will now start grouping up. Forward to the left side and leaving just Layers by himself in the potential 1v1 up against Cubo Fred. Ult still down for Aurora. The Phoenix looked at, but neither team really willing to commit to pull the trigger to go in just yet. Some big crits coming out of Cyclone up against Neil, but that's the call for Benji to go up. Descent into Madness by the Cthulhu, and already just trying to deal with Dardes and Neil Ma. Neil uses his ultimate just to try and zone them away, and this defense is just enough to hold them out. But for how much longer can the Warriors hold on?
Still doing a good job of keeping that Phoenix safe. Mid-Phoenix is gone.
Oh,
Layers
Benji
and Paul got it.
Pulled back in,
Oh,
but
nice.
not quite enough damage. Nico also takes a lot in the Sanctified Field here to force the ultimate out of Cyclone Spin. A blink in by Cubo Fred, committing to the dive up against the Roar. Riptide pushed them away for the time, but now Neil goes in with the blink, and Benji does manage to get a fear.
Layers?
In the back line is Layers against 5. The Mire and the pin do hold off the Warriors, but all that while, Layers got that mid lane Phoenix, and Paul may have a beeline to this enemy team. He'll throw out some big damage and a poly shot at Dardes, but not quite going in just yet. Neil does hit that root to hold him back.
Not quite yet, but this left side Phoenix might be gone now that they've bought some space. This healing from the emoji, but fire nearly gone from the Tartarus Titans.
They were almost dead, but already back up to near full health. Nika at the front line tries to go for the stun. Rivers Rebuke are back up, and there's no escape path for them as the Riptide holds in Nika, and Layers finds Neil. Left side Phoenix goes down. Paul goes in for the dive. The stun hits Vote, and Vote is gone. Dardes left out to dry, and it's Layers who picks him up. Nika and Cubo, the last lines of defense up against the Tartarus Titans to try and defend their own Titan. But Paul still has an ultimate on this Cthulhu. Will dive in. Cubo stands no chance. A triple kill for Layers and a Titan going down to give the Tartarus Titans their first win of this best-of-5 set.
Hey man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If they don't have an answer for Cthulhu plus the Morrigan, we're going to keep picking Cthulhu plus the Morrigan. And we're just going to beat you with it. Felt like they had some ideas there for the Warriors, but they were just nowhere to be found. Objective after objective after objective, the Titans were able to group up, do it, get some Global Golden experience, and then wait for the next one because the Warriors just never contested them.
And it's one of those things we've been asking kind of ever since the comp came out is how are you going to deal with it? Well, so far, the Warriors did not find an answer here in game number 1. We'll take it to a break and come back to the desk for game number 2.
Sabroso. Y cha cha cha. Sabroso, señoras y señores. Este es un baile que se llama cha cha cha. ¿Cómo es? Sabroso.
Now, we were nervous about the draft for the Oni Warriors going into game number 1 here, and for good reason, I think. The Tartarus Titans, this is a clean performance. There's like 10 kills in this game total from the Titans. A lot of them happen in the last couple of team fights here in this game, and the Titans make quick work of the Oni Warriors in game number 1. Marching towards the SMITE World Championship now are the Tartarus Titans, and you can be as well in style at shop.hi-rezstudios.com. The SMITE World Championship Season 8 bundle with hat. That's the caveat I'm going to throw in here. With hat.
Oof.
Available right now. Miff, this hat, guess what? Limited edition.
No.
That type of bundle, the bundle with hat,
Whoa.
will sell out.
What?
And now there will be a bundle without hat
No.
after
Wait,
that.
What, really?
But right now, if you want that hat, which I do want, that's a pretty sweet-looking hat, you can go online and get the SWC Season 8 bundle with hat.
With
at shop.hi-rezstudios.com for the SMITE World Championship Season 8 bundle. But we got to talk about game number 1, and that is a game that the Tartarus Titans happy to win. And in games like this, you know, clean comes to mind, consistent comes to mind. I think draft comes to mind. You know, we theorized a little bit in the green room while we were watching this one. I I mean, it's pretty obvious. You know, Morgan gets locked in. You know that the Titans want to have a Cthulhu after that. And the Oni Warriors still pick a pretty early Ola run into what we were assuming would be a Cthulhu, and it just never got comfortable.
Every single one of the Tartarus Titans picks, barring Erlang Shen, fully counters Ola run. The Hachiman can utilize his ultimate to just work his way throughout an entirety of Sanctified Fields. Paul is essentially just another Cthulhu. Sure, you can say the Morgan probably doesn't have a great matchup into Ola run himself, but Changeling means that you've got a great matchup if your team has one, and they certainly did. I'm not sure that I'm willing to say that the Oni Warriors draft was bad, because
No, I
it
don't
necessarily
think it was a bad
not.
draft.
But I think that if it was the Oni Warriors saying, okay, we know what the Tartarus Titans want to do and we don't care because we've got our own style to play and we're going to concern ourselves with that, I think you could put that style to bed.
Right.
It's time to start addressing what the opposition is doing, because the Tartarus Titans composition in the team fight phase, it just felt unstoppable every single time. Benji was an iron wall, felt like he started and ended every engagement on his own whim, and if it wasn't him, it was Paul pretending to be him. The Tartarus Titans, in clean fashion, take game one.
Right, it was the answer of, all right, you have the Achilles and that execute. Maybe there's an answer to the Cthulhu. And if it's not that, we have the Nemesis for that ultimate strip away those protections. That's a potential answer. And we just saw neither of those come to fruition. A single kill in this game for the Oni Warriors. And remember, this is not something the Oni Warriors are immune to. We've seen the Onis drop a game without getting a single kill once or twice already in the group stages. They have been able to bounce back from that on a somewhat consistent basis. Cyclone Spin puts up a pretty hefty 20,000 damage here in this game. Top damage in the game was Benji. But this Titans team, if they have been the meta changers at times, but this is not a draft where they're changing the meta. This is a draft that the Titans have played previously in the past, and it's just something the Oni Warriors thought they might have had an answer to. But I think at this point, if you're leaving that Morrigan open, you see a Morrigan locked in for the Titans, you have to assume there's going to be a Nike or a Cthulhu somewhere on the other end of that.
And I think the Tartarus Titans probably knew that. There's no way they didn't. The draft that they had made sense. I think that we even saw throughout the early game a couple of attempted ganks towards the solo, because that's one of the best ways to make sure this Cthulhu isn't running rampant in the team fight, is to keep him behind, but those ganks did not hit pay dirt. It was the Tartarus Titans who got off to a quick start, and then they stagnate the game with their lead and get to that late game team fight where they just dominate.
I have a question.
Please.
Do you want to go into picks and bans for game 2?
Now I do.
Now you do. Okay, let's go ahead. Jump in. Miff, do you feel powerful now? You're controlling our.
That's the first time production let me do it. That's the first time it's ever happened. Oh my god.
If you had said no, I do wonder if we would have hung out there for a little while.
Almost certainly not.
I probably would have broken and said, "Okay, anyway, we're going." Sorry, and we would have headed on in. Let's catch back up though with the bands that we already see rolling on in for the Oni Warriors. We're going to take that hell away. That's something that Paul has looked scary on. So why not? We don't want to have to deal with it. I tend to agree with the Oni Warriors in that mindset. Tartarus Titans still in that first pick slot, and that's what's important here. Remember, it was Morrigan and then Sylvanas Olarun for the Oni Warriors were the top three. That was 1, 2, and 3 in game number 1 was draft priority. All three, I'm hesitating, I'm looking, all three still available at the moment. Oni Warriors could change things up here if they want to take away one of those priority picks from the Oni Warriors. You might solve some of your issues if you take away the Cthulhu, the Nike. Morrigan is kind of the linchpin of that style of composition, but then Aphrodite has looked good for Paul. And so Paul definitely draws a lot of attention in picks and bans anyway. But, all right. All right.
Adaptation time. Let's go.
Best of 5. You got to
right.
adapt.
Game 2.
Morrigan is the pick. You have to know.
It's like Terra Cthulhu, right? They're just going to take Terra Cthulhu.
You have to know a Cthulhu is getting picked if it doesn't end up getting picked here. Is that a robe he's in?
My man Vote is doing Halloween a little bit late. The Big Lebowski on the screen right now. Big chillin' on the side of the Oni Warriors as they try and decide whether or not they do want to run back the Ola run and Sylvanas
He was
here.
anything but chilling in game 1. Early on, they just chose Vote to die on the Ola run, and
I don't think they chose.
the only comfort he felt
Vote.
was in real life, sitting in his chair in that cozy-looking robe. That's all I know. But I'm not surprised that the Warriors are taking their time thinking about this here. So that's a change. I still think you have to. I mean, And again, this is, we're saying, yes, obviously it's going to be a Cthulhu or a Nike paired with this Morrigan. Clearly the Oni Warriors are smarter than we are. I'll always speak for myself, smarter than I am. So they know
Wow.
that that's a possibility. They might just have an answer to it. So, could be Cthulhu, could be Nike, could be something else to pair with this Morrigan. But Yamoja and Soul is what we're working with here, so already some changes, some adaptations, Myth, in the draft.
Yeah, good pressure. Yamoja should be able to help out whoever you decide to toss into the long lane, be it Soul or potentially somebody else. Soul has her home in both the mid and the long lane. But we got to talk about what the Tartarus Titans are doing because they have not hit their cards. They don't play it close to their chest. No, I'm gonna. It's Morrigan, Cthulhu. Gotta think there's going to be two of them. Gotta think the Oni Warriors want to shut it down early. And this time, the Oni Warriors won't get the Sylvanas for themselves. That goes the way of the Titans. So good AoE healing, decent protections. You've got a good engage thanks to the Wrath of Terra. This is a good draft for the Titans. I wouldn't even call this really an adaptation.
Right.
It's just good.
No, it's like the same mindset as they were looking for, but instead of Yamoja, you're going to get the Sylvanas. And then same mindset from the Oni Warriors. One of our answers might be the Achilles. Now you have big shred numbers with the Soul. It's something that you had with Olarun, but countered out the Sanctified Field was by this double Cthulhu composition. So now you're looking at Disapparate as a defensive utility that maybe the Olarun didn't have. Nemesis could be a ban here for the Titans if they're worried about Cuvo Fred in that answer. I think there was a Kali ban as well for the Titans last time. And so it depends really what the Titans think that they might end up seeing out of Cuvo Fred.
Cuvo Fred put up 5,000 damage last game, as did their support, and the healing just from the Titans support was 10,000. He invalidated 2 players on the side of the Oni Warriors, so they could concern themselves with Nemesis, as she does have a decent counter matchup into Cthulhu, just being able to strip that defense. But I think it's not about your matchup into Cthulhu when you play Nemesis into a comp like this, because that was the answer that the Jade Dragons came up with. They brought Nemesis every single time into this Titans draft, and we saw an adaptation from them in that they weren't waiting for Descent into Madness to strip defense. They had their Nemesis hunting the back line, just trying to put damage into the Morrigan before she was able to transform. So once you do transform, you're very low HP. That could be an answer here. It's Kali and Hunbots banned out.
Now, Layers is disintegrating a little bit, but I did see a Pumpkin on his counter, and I have to feel like it's a little late for Pumpkins, right? Pumpkin should be in boxes, in attics, and there should be...
You keep your pumpkins?
No, that one looked like a toy, like a plastic pumpkin or something. Right. No, Miff, I don't keep them.
Okay.
I don't keep a live pumpkin.
Look, do whatever you want to do, man.
Actually, here's a fun fact. You're supposed to, what I read, that it's nice to like throw pumpkins out into like the woods and stuff because wildlife can feed on it. It's actually very healthy for like deer and squirrels.
Yeah, it's also like fertilizer for the ground because it rots pretty quickly.
Fertilizer for the ground. Your place might smell like bad pumpkins. But,
and that smells bad. The whole office was reeking like last week on Sunday.
Right, it wasn't my pumpkin because my pumpkin was good, but all the other ones didn't feel great. All right, let's catch back up with picks and pans here, though, Miff. I don't know how you start talking about pumpkins, Miff. You're getting me off track. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
Daji and Charybdis will be the final 2 picks here for the Tartarus Titans. And Charybdis, Miff, has been a conversation piece since the start of the group stages. It's been something. See, this one you can keep year-round. This one's going in the attic somewhere,
Dave's like, you're good at figuring out which ones are good to keep, huh?
It's as hollow as my brain is. that one can go into the attic. Daji, Charybdis, final 2 for the Titans. Charybdis has seen an increased level of play. Some buffs make that one interesting. And it's less interesting, though, I think, than the AMC that ends up getting locked in here. And so you don't go Olarun, who is a relatively immobile hunter, but you do go AMC, who is a relatively immobile hunter up against a Morrigan Cthulhu. And Daji.
You've still got a great target to chase out. It feels like to me the Oni Warriors are saying, we need to win the fight. And that's the only option we have with this draft. They can't disengage anymore because of this AMC lock-in. Soul can disengage with Disapparate. Riptide's pretty good from Yamoja and could help out this AMC. But once you're in a team fight proper, if Cthulhu's within 30 units of you, AMC's going to be stuck there for the entirety of the team fight, or at least for the entirety of Descent into Madness, and then a secondary one once Paul transforms.
Right.
I'm concerned. You've got essentially the same style that a Kali brings, and that AMC is one of the best chainsaws in the game and could cut through one of these trees that is Cthulhu or the legitimate tree that is Sylvanas, but I just don't love the answers that the Oni Warriors have come up with. I think my favorite answer to this Morrigan Cthulhu is taking away one of the pieces. There's a reason we call it the combo of Morrigan Cthulhu. It could have just been a Cthulhu, or it could have just been a Morrigan, but the Oni Warriors choose. They legitimately chose. They picked second pick again, and then they chose to allow the Titans to have this exact same draft again, essentially. They chose this. They seem to think they have the answer.
And the team fight was clearly an issue. The double Cthulhu was clearly obnoxious in game 1. Paul also had moments on just the Morrigan in general, untransformed, normal the Morrigan that was just deleting the backline.
And that's going to happen to AMC.
It's going to happen to AMC, right. It feels like it's going to happen again. Talk to me about the Daji, though. Do you think Daji has a pretty good matchup into what we're seeing here on the Oni Warrior side? Do you think that Layers on a different jungle pick from the Erlang Shen can run back a good performance?
I think so. You've got some good targets for the ultimate. You could be forcing Erlang Shen into an early beads pickup. AMC obviously going to be accosted throughout the majority of this game. Also going to have to struggle to maintain his beads up against, I don't know, like a Charybdis stun or, you know, anything that Morrigan decides to do as well. So I think the Daji is definitely got the space to maneuver here. And it's a style of play that I think Layers is very comfortable with, kind of acting as that solo agent. Has a lot of one-shot burst potential as well. The Daji fits into the draft. In worst case scenario, you're burning beats, and that's a pretty good worst case.
All right, Miff. So we have been critical of the Oni Warriors draft going into, or maybe what you're allowing the Tartarus Titans to draft. Let's find some good. Let's find some silver linings here. What do you think the Oni Warriors have drafted that give them an opportunity to tie things up here in Game 2?
Decent sustain in the team fight. Achilles is self-healing, as does Soul. Yamoja can spread that throughout the team. AMC, every single one of the members of the Oni Warriors essentially has some form of self-sustain. If they are given any opportunity to look at neutral objectives, AMC and Soul together might just be one of the quickest burns you could ask for.
Yep.
So if they pull a lead, the Oni Warriors could very easily run away with it. Execute is an answer to Cthulhu. We didn't see it too often in Game 1, but it certainly can happen. There are merits to this Oni Warriors draft. I think I'm in a very similar position as we were in Game 1, in that this draft is good. Blanket statement, the Oni Warriors have got themselves a composition that can work. It's just whether or not it's able to match up to the relative value of what the Tartarus
Titans
are
what you're going
bringing.
into. Right.
And I'm not sure they've got that here.
What phase of the game do you think the Oni Warriors need to operate in? Do you think that you need to get out early, you need to find this lead early, give yourself a chance to scale up in this game, or you buying your time for some late game fighting?
If they were playing against any composition besides what the Tartarus Titans have, I'd say the Oni Warriors are so comfortable taking this to 40 minutes and just sitting there.
Right.
But when you're playing against what the Tartarus Titans have, you got to think that that 40-minute team fight is going to be double Cthulhu, Powwow, Sylvanas heals, and all that.
That sounds scary to me.
So I think late early game to early mid game is where the Oni Warriors need to establish their lead. If they're able to utilize and leverage this double auto attack composition, could be one way in for them.
I'm going to go find a deer to feed this pumpkin to while the Tartarus Titans and the Oni Warriors battle it out in Game 2.
Game 2 right here, and somehow, some way, the Titans end up getting 2 of the big picks that were so potent for them in the last game, in that Cthulhu and in the Morrigan. The Oni Warriors changed up a couple of things in their draft, namely Vote going to a different Magical ADC, and Dardes going to AMC mid. It's J-Mac, Aggro, and Billy here in game number 2, and I was thinking maybe this AMC goes to a dual lane, but Ryan, how you kind of feeling about AMC going mid in this instance?
I like it, man. I mean, AMC, I think, is kind of poised to potentially do a lot of great things. I think that up against the Morrigan, you could actually bully her out of lane. Not many characters can. You could actually out-clear her. Not many characters can. And your fight potential in the mid 3v3 is good. My main concern is with this Daji and how this AMC is going to interact there. But you get a lot of movement speed from Hives. You know, you've got great DPS. I think Dardes has a history on it, so I'm excited to see what he's going to do.
Well, if you were worried about Powwow and Daji, well, don't worry. The Oni Warriors have answered to it by picking up a full set of purification beads across the roster. All 5 players have picked up that defensive relic to try and deal with the CC that really everybody on this team offers, not just Layers up on this Daji. Looking on to the opposite side here, though, Paul got a nice little warm-up game in game number 1. Cyclone Spin going over on this Charybdis that's kind of popped up here this weekend. Well, I got to bring up an old interview that we had with Shinto. When 8.9 came out, I asked Shinto, I said, how do you think the mid lane is going to change up here? It isn't 8.9 that he was saying, we might start seeing some hunters come mid. Didn't really see a whole lot of hunters, but out here in 8.10, we're seeing a lot of these hunters flex over towards that mid lane more.
Yeah, I mean, Neath game 1, now AMC game 2, and as long as you've got that balance of magical damage, you can kind of do this kind of stuff, and you've got plenty of magical damage there for both.
Cyclone will use that Whirlpool to try and get some damage against Vote, but it's Vote who returns fire instantly. Stellar Burst starts whittling away at the health bar of Cyclone Spin. Aurora does have some sustain in this Sylvanas. It's a question of whether he got that Wisp as a second ability or did he go for the Root Pull. Well, once he hits level 3, he'll for sure have access to all 3 of those. A quiet start so far. We didn't see any of the action really in the mid lane like we saw in game number 1. It will be a Scorpion steal by Neil and Vote and continuing to put some pressure. It is a pull by Aurora on Neil, but there's not much return immediately after. Cyclone might be the one in danger, has to use that Whirlpool to get away from the stun out of Neil.
Yeah, close, but of course Charybdis has that instant CC immunity and damage immunity. That's not instant, about a half-second channel or so until you dip down into Whirlpool form, but good rotation over by Layers to make sure that Purple Buff does not get invaded, doesn't give up too much of his own, though it does mean that Benji's going to suffer.
Once again, Benji has to sit by and watch as everybody focuses on stealing away his blue buff, and while he was no stranger to it in game 1, he won't be a stranger to it here in game number 2. The Layers will get to go back and pick up his speed buff. Attempted back heartbeat invade by Cuvo, but both of those were still up and respawning at the time. So he doesn't get to steal any of the farm away aside from the blue. But as highlighted, Benji's just used to it after what happened in game 1.
Yeah, it's more impactful at this point than it was in those mid-game invades, though, because he actually wants that mana sustain for the laning phase.
Well, it's a boxing match between the Hunters, and it's going to be Cyclone who comes up on the worst end of the trade. Once again, has to use the Whirlpool to get away. The damage out of this Stellar Burst, this Mannequin Scepter Soul, man, has just become a problem in these dual lanes.
Just can't outtrade Soul and autos early, especially Mannequin Soul. Like, that is just a ton of damage that's going to be coming your way. And Vote definitely playing with a lot more moxie than in game 1 of this set, because he's not playing up against, you know, a Yamoja as Olaron. He's not playing a more late game character. He's playing one like.
But it's Layers 1v2, has the Pow Lao, is going to get 1 set of beads, make that 2 sets of beads as Cuvo and Dardes both pop theirs to get away from the Pow Lao. Rotation from Paul may have scared those beads out of Cuvo Fred this time around. But Layers stripping those away leaves a little bit of an opening for the rest of the team.
And you know what? Oftentimes we're going to be talking about Cthulhu transformation for the Morrigan, but I think in this game there are going to be instances where the dodgy transformation is better. This has historically been a very common transform for the Morrigan because it's just easy punishment for a character without any sort of CC immunity left. He can easily solo Dardes if he gets a stun on him. Just stun, Dark Omen, transform, pull with Pow Lao, see you later. You don't need any help after that. And the same can be said for Fred. He's got to be careful here.
Cuvo, he'll get stunned out by Paul. Dark Omen and transform right into that Dodging with no beads left. That's going to be an instant pullback. That's going to be Layers who strikes First Blood using his Pow Lao to take that one away, or at least using his damage to close it out. So First Blood, Tartarus Titans.
I mean, honestly, only losing 1 in that situation might be better than what you normally see, but Fred jumps on the grenade of the Morrigan ultimate there to make sure Dardes doesn't have to, because his beads will be up by the time that Changeling ultimate is back off cooldown. But, I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that. Just stun him, transform, kill him. No problem. And the pressure on these beads is going to be significant because you can get them with the Sylvanas as well. Charybdis can force beads. The Tartarus Titans, I think, in the mid game could really abuse their amount of CC and punish the Warriors who don't have a lot of CC immunity available.
But even with that First Blood, the Titans don't really pull up any kind of significant lead. It's only about 150 separating them, so the Oni Warriors were doing a good job of getting some of that early gold in their favor. But that First Blood at least evens it out here, gets a kill on the board for Layers, the person again, who's really been stepping up for this team ever since he's joined there and making sure to get one of your hyper carries. A kill early on will definitely be favorable to this Titans team. Be the Oracle Harpies going down. This one goes over to the Oni Wards. They'll have vision on the Scorpion, but these Scorpions have been going down relatively fast in just about every game that we've been seeing. Usually by that 7-8 minute mark, you see them both gone.
Yeah, teams just can't pass up that global golden experience, as they shouldn't. That's
it's just
too
good.
easy. Yeah, just too good to get that global gold. So Layers could be grabbing this right side one, but decides to play it a little bit more patiently, wait until he's got some extra pressure alongside him.
Yeah, Paul is just chilling here. Dardes standing so far back, not wanting to walk up, so he'll lose out on a few minions of experience. As Paul and Aurora rotate over, Aurora, I should say, rotates in towards this mid lane here to kind of give a little bit of help over towards Paul. He'll get a little bit of experience too. He does have his Gauntlet of Thieves online, can start stacking that up. Same towards Neil Ma, where we have been seeing more often than not Lotus Crown kind of be that first item in these Sylvanas slots. Layers goes in with the ultimate. Palau does hit Dardes, but Dardes has the beads to get rid of it. He won't use them this time around. Instead, it's going to be an ult out of Neilma to hold them in. The stun is good. Cubo Fred gets some damage and returns it right back against Layers. Now Aurora's one in danger, but a triple Palau pull and a triple ult out of Aurora makes sure to get the mid laner out, but they do sacrifice Layers.
Yeah, Layers just needed to be a little bit more accurate with those shots because he was going to be in a bad spot as soon as he came down, but Dardes just disrespects him, doesn't use the beads on that pull, really smart play, and then Neil is right there alongside him in order to make sure that he's got that protection, knows that he can survive with all the mending waters and the River's Rebuke coming out. So good communication by the Warriors and a really good turnaround in what looked like a good fight for the Titans.
Paul, who's stuck around at the back pillar by the red buff, manages to secure and save his red buff from Cubo Fred, who is trying to steal that one out. So he makes sure to at least be able to hold on to that buff, same as Dardes. On the top side, Dardes does go back to base. He has his Transcendence over halfway stacked up, and then it'll be a Balance Blade. Second item for him. Again, Cyclone Spin going towards this Devourer's Gauntlet. We've been seeing a rise in this sustain item kind of coming back for a couple of Hunters.
Exactly. A lot of Hunters starting to go back to Devos, and I think it is a pretty abusable start, but still, it scales really well, and that was never really the problem. It was just about the early game, and you know, if Devo starts rising, I wouldn't be too surprised if Ikaval starts coming up, because Ikaval is the best at punishing those early Devo starts. It's the best level 1 item for fighting you can get. So maybe whenever we see physical Hunters go up against one another, that's the adjustment.
Scorpion started by the Titans, but instead it will be the Warriors who take it away from them just by Cubo stepping up, and it's a 4 versus 3 on this right side of the map. Paul went back to base to get his Doom Orb and get his Tier 2 Enchanted Spear. A little bit of a battle on this left side, Scorpion. Vote and Spin over here. Cyclone Spin trying to battle out for that one. It'll be a net wash on the left-hand side. It'll just be the Warriors getting it on the right, and a little group up in the mid lane, and some boxing once again between these Hunters, but Cyclone wants nothing to do with it. He sees a rotation on a ward, and he'll go right back to the tower.
Yeah, and that does not waste any time that time around. The first Whirlpool form, he kind of went in and got a little bit of chip damage off, and then backed up and instantly ate a Stellar Burst, and has realized that that might not be the best way to take these exchanges. So instead, just use our healing, and he does heal quite a bit. Basically back up to full instantly right there, and Aurora can be around to help him out as well.
Oh, Vogue wants this boxing match. Dardes is right behind Aurora. Cubo Fred gets caught out. It's a Palau out of Layers. Will pull both of them in and get some damage with 1,000 cuts. The taunt comes back through. Cubo just needs a little more damage to help back, and it's a 1-for-1 trade. The Maul used by Cyclone catches Boat out. Aurora goes for the pull, but it's a quick beads out of Boat. And with Dardes here, or Paul now going in through on the transformation, he'll take out Vote and at least make it a 2-for-2 trade. But Dardes might be in a tricky spot, or same as Neil, but the attention has been divided between these two players. Instead, it's just Paul fighting against Neil.
Neil does have enough for a Riptide. Nice juke on that knockup. As long as he doesn't get hit by that, I think he's out. So, yeah, shouldn't be a problem for him anymore without that knockup landing. Paul does get the cleanup kill there onto Vote, which is big, but good split up there by Dardes and Vote. They don't both run the same way. Paul that time goes Cthulhu. Thought that maybe Dodgy was still better in that position, but either way, at least gets one of those kills. But the Warriors backline playing well, not together, I suppose, in order to make sure that only one falls.
Yeah, making sure to split themselves up there, so that way at least one of them can live out. In this instance, it will be both making it away for the Oni Warriors. 3-3 here at 10 minutes, a few more kills than we saw in the last game, and the gold being dead even across the board in experience. Slightly favoring the Oni Warriors, but not too much here. Only about a level in the mid, a level in support. And Layers has a slight little lead over Cubo Fred. So a dead even game for all intents and purposes here. Just shy of 11 minutes. Aurora will eat a stun by Neil, but won't be too alarmed by that. Maybe by that Stellar Burst will alarm him, though.
No, he's all right. I mean, it's a Sylvanas. He's still pretty healthy, and you don't have to worry about River's Rebuke quite yet. So certainly not the end of the world here.
Cyclone needs a little bit of damage. Again, the Stellar Burst from Vote starting to poke through. It is a Typhon's Fang, picked up by the Mage once again. So some lifesteal, some nice early damage built up on this ADC, and that Mannequin Scepter that's just been stacking up that extra damage all throughout the game. And looking at the player damage here, Vote actually topping the charts for his team. Well, I say topping. Him and Nika are going back and forth, but Nika's just over here fighting a single person the entire time.
Yeah, he's going to be chilling in this lane. Cthulhu is not an interactive laner, if you will. You know, warrior v warrior, sometimes you'll have a lot of trading and maybe some ultimate baiting and that kind of stuff, but it's
A lot of that.
yeah, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of Benji raising the arm, clearing the wave, Nika out clearing him, and then walking back towards his side of the jungle. It's a non-interactive matchup over on the right-hand side without any sort of jungle pressure, and even with jungle pressure, it's not easy.
Cyclone caught by the pin, uses the Whirlpool this time to get away, and a Riptide out of Neil. Make sure to zone Aurora away. Gold Fury now has the vision control towards the Oni Warriors. They do drop the Oracle Harpies, Layers. Chilling out here by the red buff to make sure to secure that one for his mid laner, Paul, who does go back and get a Spear of Desolation to add a little bit more CDR and a lot of power, more than anything else, to this Morgan.
Same exact build as last time. Expected to be another Divine Ruin in that same slot. Again, doesn't need a whole lot of percent pen. Instead, it's more about just making sure that you can effectively kill backline with the first part of your Morgan combo. You know, you want to be able to stealth in, 1 auto 2 change form instantly, and then be able to proc your own 2. And so flat pen on those squishy characters is going to do the most for you. A little bit of CDR, of course, from the Deso, but mostly there for the power pen and CDR and the CDR as well. It all feels pretty good.
Now, last game out of the Warriors, the only anti-heal that we did see was the Toxic Blade out of Cuvo. He's picked it up here again. And a Pestilence out of Nika. Do you think maybe now with this AMC, who's honestly, every time you queue up in like Assault or something like that, you get a Brawler's Beat Stick, you throw them Bs out. We'll maybe see if he goes there. Nika uses the ultimate to get out. Layers, he's not satisfied with just the ultimate. He wants just a little bit more. So it'll be a beads out of Nika and an ultimate out of Benji to try and close it out and take down the soul laner. But Layers is the one who's tanking up the tower, and he might trade his life away as the tier 1 tower does take him down. But now it's Cuvo who's going to run it right down against Benji. The knockup holds him off for now. Benji will use the dash, but he gets pinned out, and the Mire and the taunt right after by Cuvo now pulls him back in. And this 1v1 scuffle, Cuvo gets a nice little heal. The minions are holding him off for a little while, but he doesn't have any backup. But neither does Cuvo Fred.
Man, I wonder how. I guess Benji didn't hit Nika with the transform damage, and Layers went in too early. If Benji was tanking tower, I think that goes really easily for the Titans, because Fred can come in and Benji might be low, but Layers has got insane burst damage on this Dodgy and probably could have killed him with some help from Benji. I don't know if that was Layers losing his patience or what, but ends up going in a little bit too early, and with him tanking the tower, Nika made a good play. That turnaround stun was huge.
Able to get that kill, and again, traded out as a 1-for-1 to make the scoreboard now 4 versus 4. Here, 14 minutes in. Tartarus Titans and the Warriors still even in gold, still relatively even experience across the board. Just scuffle after scuffle coming up as a net neutral over anything else. Though they did get Nika's beads during that last engagement, cost them a couple ultimates to do so. And Layers also traded out his blink to make sure they can get that fight.
Feel like anytime you got a beads down on the Warrior side that it's a win for the Titans, just because they have this potential for double Dodgy, but don't know.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, unfortunate there for Cyclone. Don't know if Layers is going to be super keen on taking another visit over the solo lane after how the last one went.
The Layers will go up and at least clear out a little bit what's been thrown out. This team, Tartarus Titans, still playing a little bit slow here, and as we kind of push towards these later stages of the game, Aggro, you know, kind of what's that turnaround moment here for the Warriors to really kind of, this is their moment to shine versus the Titans.
Well, they've got to try and be here to defend this Gold Fury right now. Can't just give them away like they did last time, and it looks like they will do so successfully. I mean, the Warriors, they just need the capability to be able to kill frontline, and they are getting close to that, but they also have to be very wary of how they're using their relics, and, you know, making sure that Layers and Paul can't get these big pulls off, because Dodgy pull isn't just a reposition. It does a ton of damage, but it's all backloaded on when you hit the pillar. That's where the bleed damage you get from hitting the pillar is intense, and so even if the repositioning wasn't enough, that damage in the late game, you really need to Aegis that Pal-Out pull, because otherwise you're going to take too much damage from it.
It'll be a Jotuns of Brawlers and then a Hydra's third item for Layers to try and capitalize on some of those potential auto attack cancels out of those Dodgy. Again, with that objective started up and then washed away, the Oni Warriors instead divert their attention over towards the mid lane tier 1 tower. They take it out and finally get themselves a small lead here, about 1,500 gold up that they've gotten over the Titans, and this is the first real lead here in game number 2. Otherwise, it's been kind of petering back and forth between basically 0 and like 400 or 500.
It's been, this is the first real lead the Warriors have had this set, that's for sure. I think that overall, the Titans, again, a little bit slower pace most of the time. I do think that they scale a little bit better than the Warriors in this game, but this one is closer. You know, you've got AMC, who becomes very vulnerable, but also very strong because of how hi-rez and just getting more attack speed and his movement speed, he gets hard to catch. Soul scales very well and has a good lead right now for Vote. You've got Yamoja this time for Neil, love that. I mean, you've got good tools if you're the Oni Warriors, but until I see it with my own eyes, the Warriors be able to kill a Cthulhu who's ulting, I can't favor them because they didn't do it at all last game, and they haven't done it yet this game.
It hasn't happened so far here in over 40 minutes of play. We have not seen this Cthulhu really be under threat by anybody, whether it be Benji as the Cthulhu or Paul transforming in towards that Cthulhu. Layers sitting around this left side of the jungle, wants to try and maybe make something happen here, but Cuvo and Dardes kind of sitting a little bit further back. They're not going to get anything. Instead, both teams will now meet up by this Gold Fury yet again. Got started up earlier, started burning down, but there was no full commit. A pull in by Aurora and a knock up against Nika, but Nika's doing just fine. He's the only one affected by it. Instead, it's now Neil Ma rotating over, and he still has that River's Rebuke. Could pull that trigger at any moment, but he's going to hold on to the ult for now.
Cyclone is not dealing enough damage. Went for the Maw, but just doesn't land it.
Layers goes in with the Trickster Spirit and it manages to get Neil Ma to walk away. Meyer drops by Benji, but doesn't catch anybody, just creating some zone for the Gold Fury startup. Half health on the objective, but keeps getting leashed back and forth. The Tartarus Titans do drop it to try and get some vision, but Aurora picks it right back up.
Still no ultimate for Aurora or Cyclone Spin, while the Warriors have all 5. I like them sticking around for this fight.
Benji sticking off to the side here. Nika goes in, and so does Cuvo Fred. Taunt hits Layers and gets the Palau out, and Aurora is stuck in the middle of the rivers. Palau is only going to pull Neil in, and it's Cuvo who grabs Aurora while Benji tries to deal with the other side of it. Paul goes in for the transformation, and it's Layers who picks up Cuvo with the bleed. Now Neil the one in danger, and transformation into the madness out of Paul. You had trouble with one Cthulhu, but you almost got one on the tail end of the fight. Benji is down to 10% and now gone. Nika manages to grab him, and Paul gets some big damage and a teleport in by Layers. And ends to get the double kill up on Dardes, but it's a traded out double for double. But here comes Paul, ripping through the backline, gets him under the tier 2.
Got him with the chase, and now it's the Tartarus Titans backline. The only ones left standing. Neil Ma somehow got forgotten about. Paul left Nika or Neil at 1 HP with no Omi and just didn't chase him down. Instead, tried to help the rest of the fight. And Neil surviving might be the difference maker on them being able to do this Gold Fury.
And they're going to pass this Gold Fury back and forth between the carries. Neil is here to try and stop this nonsense, and he'll be able to delay it at the very least. So all this fighting around the Gold Fury just nets a 3-for-3 exchange between these two teams. And the Gold Fury stands yet again. Neil will just make sure to get some vision control back on there, and we've returned to our state of net neutral.
All right, well, they killed a Cthulhu. It took them a while, and it took 3 members to do it, but eventually the Warriors were able to whittle him down and get the kill onto Benji as he was solo diving in the 1v3. But I feel like the Titans, if they would have just used their dual lane ultimates a little bit better in that fight, that would have got a lot better. It's not often that you get to go even in a fight where you just have 2 less ultimates than your opposition, but that's exactly what just happened. The Warriors did a good job of dividing that team fight, but still not enough.
Layers goes in, big burst damage against Cuvo's. Got to pull him back in with that Palau. No beads and no life for the jungler. Layers gets 1 in the tray. They lose out on the Pyromancer. That did get secured by the Oni Warriors. Tartarus Titans answer back with a swift kill up against Cuvo Fred, though maybe not the most valuable, only sitting now 1 and 4 on the slash line. The craziest thing to me here, Aggro, if I'm not mistaken, Benji didn't die at all in game number 1.
Yeah.
This is his, because of that then, this is his 2nd death in 6 games of play. That is wild.
Yeah, that's not enough if you're going to be the Titans, for sure. You got to be able to kill him more than that. Maybe they can make it happen here, though. Benji isn't here for this pull.
Gold Fury down to 10%, but leashed yet again. Neil Ma, enough of a threat on this Umoja to force them to leash the Gold Fury, but not entirely. Got back up to half health, but once again, leashed by Aurora. Back and forth, pull against Nika, and some damage out of Cyclone Spin. He goes up for the maul, pulls the trigger, but who is he going to slam with it? Supernova expended out of Vote to zone them away, and Cyclone will instead cancel out that ultimate and go right back to the Gold Fury. The Tartarus Titans are not giving up on trying to grab this gold.
Benji in the back line again, going to descend into madness, forcing back Dardes and Vote, and everyone collapses.
Dardes and Vote both hit by that knockup, and it's Benji who seals the deal with the AoE, but Benji goes down to the execute out of Nika, and it's Layers in the backline on the Powwow. Doesn't grab anybody. Aurora waiting back to help him out, and Paul goes in for the transformation for a second Cthulhu. They killed one. Can they kill the second one? A top by Cubo. Fred is good, but he's separated himself from the team, and Cyclone Spin picks him up while Paul hits 3 with the knock above his own and sends them all back towards the Tier 2 tower yet again.
Again, the Warriors can take down Benji, but not the second Cthulhu, and the Warriors that time just got too grouped up. The Titans can really punish you whenever that happens. Their AoE is fantastic, and the Gold Fury will eventually go down in their favor. Big difference there for me is the better ultimate from Cyclone Spin. Not that it hits anyone that time, but that it forced out Supernova. And that is a trade that I will take 7 days a week. If I can make him use Supernova while I use my ultimate, his ultimate is way better than mine. So I'm very okay with that trade if I'm Cyclone, forces everyone back. And again, that's disdain from the Sylvanas, just keeping everyone up and healthy, Benji creating a ton of space, and then Paul being very, very patient with that follow-up dive. Really love the way the Titans are playing these team fights.
And again, it's a low answer to that sustain. No Curse Donk out of the Oni Warriors. Instead, it's a Blink Beads and then a Sunder Beads out of the two frontliners. And the only anti-heal that's been picked up is once again out of Cubo Fred with the Toxic Blade. Instead, it was a Bulwark of Hope coming out of Nika. The question then comes, is Dardes able to slot some kind of anti-heal on this AMC? I kind of alluded to it earlier, but, you know, Brawler's Beatstick feels like it's an easy application with a god like AMC. I mean, every time you run, like, you know, an assault game, it just feels like you're always constantly under threat of bees.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get good anti-heal if you go for it, but at this point, he needs Chins, and he probably needs Exi as well. I don't think he's going to be able to fit it.
Fire Giant started by the Tartarus Titans, and Cyclone and Aurora here to deal the damage, and Layers teleports in. And this Fire Giant is going down quick to the Titans. Benji dashes in to try and zone them away and goes up into the transformation to hold just Cubo Fred up. The Fire Giant does get leashed by the Titans. They'll hold off as the second transformation as Neilmaw just gets caught out in the middle of all of it. The two Cthulhus ripping through the back line. Boat's got nowhere to go. Dardes and Nika both get knocked up, and Paul still has a couple seconds left on this transformation before he goes back down. But they've already picked up 2 in the midst of the fight, and it's only Cubo who's still sticking around, him and Nika, to try and hold away this fire.
Neil just didn't have beads. Layer still had ultimate. Thank you very much. This dodge pick continues to do work right now for the Titans, second on the player damage charts.
Nika tries to go in. He gets pulled back in by Aurora, some beads to hold him out, but he gets knocked through the ring of fire. The Fire Giant is getting low. Nobody has leached it away just yet. Cyclone's still holding on, and the rest of the Warriors zoned away. Tartarus Titans, after finally killing 2 and taking the Fire Giant, they net the objective. They net a 3rd kill as Dardes gets caught out, and maybe even a 4th. Cubo Fred gets caught lazy backing, and the Dark Omen Polynomicon across the wall picks up a kill for Paul.
See, Paul, the way he's gamer leaning, he could actually see around the corner. That's how he's able to make that work.
Is that how that works? Kind
Yeah,
of like you playing a shooter and you have the 2 buttons to kind of peek corner?
Right, yeah, he just leans IRL in order to make sure he could see Fred right there, and that death from Fred is actually critical because that makes this siege from the Titans a lot easier.
5 versus 3. Nika and Neil here. Both of them do have their ultimate. Cyclone falls low and he'll have to use the Whirlpool to get out, but so does Vote. Aegis and Disapparate, and a quick ultimate by Layers is not quick enough to take him out. Vote gets out because of Disapparate. Neilmaw down to a quarter health. The Phoenix looking worse for wear here for the Oni Warriors. That one gets shredded away, and Nika has to sit back and watch as the bird goes down. Titans, they don't get a kill in this fight, but they do get one of the better objectives to grab away here in this right side Phoenix.
And they are able to get out scot-free for it as well. No way Nika able to catch Paul. Nika does have Blink, but that would be pretty psycho to try and go for the solo kill there with Paul having relics up. The Titans, man, they just control these engagements too well. They're just really, really good at playing these in front to back, you know, just making sure we hit who we need to be hitting right away. Paul's patience is literally unmatched in the SPL. No one more patient than that guy for his right moment. Ends up going in at the right time and really able to clean up that fight nicely. And again, they've been able to answer one Cthulhu a couple of times. And it's just the problem with compositions like this, if you're going up against them, is that, you know, okay, we handle it once, we handle it twice, it's all going well, but it's so easy to just steamroll a fight if you don't play it, if they don't play it perfectly against you when you've got double Cthulhu. That all it takes is one misstep there from the Warriors where Neil gets pulled out, doesn't have beads, and Vote gets killed as his relics were coming up. that it's just a complete wash because you need every little bit of damage and protection that you've got in order to take down something like this. And as soon as those picks happen, the Warriors just have to crumble.
Paul acting as the pseudo-assassin on the Morgan, just stepping around the jungle anywhere that he so pleases. He's got Benji as backup, and the Titans will strip away one more tower. Only the tier 2 in mid lane still stands while fire minions start pouring up the right side of the map. You can see one standing up where that tower once stood. Meyer comes out from Benji to try and zone Nika. Won't find anybody on the root damage, just the slow. Everybody on the Tartarus Titans are waiting patiently for their moment to strike. Last time, it was Benji who pulled the trigger first. Will it be him this time around?
I mean, Layers has ult, Neil has no beads. That's what I'd be looking to do if I were the Tartarus Titans. Just let Layers go in, blink in, use that ultimate, and make sure that you were not full committing on it because Neil is going to River's Rebuke as it happens. So you gotta expect what his response is gonna be, but that's gonna be his only option.
Nika goes in for some poke, and Benji tries to return some poke of his own, but Meyer's not going to grab anybody. Instead, it's just some pin. And all this while, by baiting him out here on the left-hand side, they're letting these fire minions come up into the right Phoenix, and they're going to send at least one person back. Cuvo does walk away, and the Phoenix starts to be under siege here. Aurora and Cyclone walking up, but the Bees damage coming out of this mid-lane AMC is starting to come through, and Cyclone and Aurora are both forced to walk away.
Fire's off, basically, in 25 seconds, so the Warriors have successfully defended their left side Phoenix, and this is where the Morrigan can struggle, is on these Phoenix sieges. She is not good in those moments. Paul does have poly. I would have liked to see him be a little more aggressive and just try and get in range for some poly autos every 3 seconds, but the hard engage for the Warriors, you know, you've got a River's Rebuke that you've got to worry about. It just end up not being able to pull the trigger, so it ends up not going their way on that left side Phoenix.
That's a 397 that I saw on that poly hit against the tower. Yeah, they can shred just about anything that they want to. Oh, and he's not even 6 slot just yet. Still can go back to base and pick up that final item, which might be just what Paul and the rest of the team are buying their time to do here. As Paul is standing up in the Phoenix, it will be a Rada Tahuti last item. So now that poly hit that was hitting for 400 on a tower, well, let's add just a little bit more there by way of that Rada Tahuti picked up. Full 6 slotted on the top 3 here for the Tartarus Titans. Cyclone Spin still needs to get his 6th item online. Aurora, if he's lucky, can maybe start working on his 6th. But the Titans have netted themselves about an 11,000 gold lead here, all still relevant. As you can look on the other side here, Aggro, nobody's got 6th item, and Neil hasn't even finished up his 5th yet.
Yeah, pretty far behind here for the Warriors now, 12,000 gold. But, you know, 12,000 gold at 29 minutes is not the end of the world. You can kind of play into this if you're the Warriors. It's not easy. You know, killing a level 20 Sylvanas is pretty much impossible with his passive, but at least you'll be able to get something going here with some of your late game itemization. Dardes has finished his chin size. Obsidian Shard done for Vogue.
Fire Giant started up and being shredded like paper. Cyclone Spin and Layers have demolished this fire before the Warriors even have a chance to respond. Nika gets a stun on one, but he gets return fire with a stun of his own. Beads will help him out, but the Riptide throws him against the wall and sets up for Benji to go into the madness. River's Rebuke will hold out one Cthulhu, but it will not hold out Layers. He goes up into Powwow, but doesn't pull anybody back just yet. Now with the River's gone, Benji storms up the right side.
Nika knocked up, and that might be enough to have the rest of them catch, but not quite. But look at the beads. No beads for Nika or for Dardes.
Cyclone Spin starts pelting away at the Phoenix and even pelting away at Nika. He gets knocked up by the ultimate out of Aurora, but it's not quite enough to take his life or take that Phoenix's just yet. Pin only hits Benji, and the Warriors are not willing to defend against this weakened Phoenix. That one goes down once again, and the Titans make their move towards mid.
Yeah, I think it's just clean Phoenix's time, but there's still 5 members here from the Warriors with some key ultimates. Watch for Nika's execute. He's got to try and make a play.
Aurora does get stunned out. Nika finds that, and Aurora pit down to half. The Bulwark pops in,
nice.
A triple Riptide, throws him back in the Phoenix, and the Titans got to start being a little bit more careful where they walk. These Riptides can put them out of position, but Benji blinks into the backline once again, but no ult is available to him. Neilmaw down to half of the Phoenix under siege, but Layers just slams into the backline and executes Foad all on his own. Neil with nowhere to go as Paul finishes the job with him and his own ultimate. It's a double kill now for Layers, and Paul swinging away on this Cthulhu. There's no answer back. It's another triple kill for Layers at the end of the day, and another Titan going down to the Tartarus Titans to make this a 2-0 start in this best-of-5 set.
Look, after they got Fire Giant, we were riding along with Benji, and we watched from a high vantage point Layers nearly one-shot Vote. Vote barely escapes. They're able to set their feet on the mid-Phoenix defense. And then Layers goes, all right, let me go back and do what I was doing earlier. One-shots Vote again, and then it breaks the whole game open. I mean, Layers has just been playing so well recently. You want to talk about a transformation for a team. Look at the Titans pre-Layers and post-Layers.
It's a whole different team.
Whole different squad, man, and he's been a big part of it.
I mean, at this point, we're getting ready to go into Game 3. They haven't really found the answer to killing 2 Cthulhus.
Nope.
I got to imagine at this point, you just got to ban one or both of those.
That's an answer. You can find it in the ban column. That's how you answer the 2 Cthulhus, yeah.
We're going to go ahead and throw it to a break. We'll come back to the desk to get you guys started for Game 3, so stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey there, SMITE fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce that the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
What's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's @Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
Tartarus Titans bring it out here in Game 2, making full use of those Alienware PCs that they are all playing on. You too can be playing. What does Aggro say? Play on the same gear that our pros are. It's not just for the pros. That's what it is. This VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can play on the same gear that our pros do if you go to smitegame.com/Alienware, and you too can get a discount on this gear if you use code SMITEAW. As always, all the love to Alienware for being our title sponsor here in Season 8 of the SPL. Myth, I don't know if they needed the extra boost. No, that's the focus up finger, and you're also not allowed to do that. You've been Myth banned from, that's the Myth one rule. You're not allowed to do that anymore.
One.
Got it. But the uppercut finger is okay. Maybe we ban you from the desk for doing the, you're not allowed to do that.
No, that's half my hours.
I need it, please. No, we need you here, Myth. We need you to break down exactly what happens here in game number 2 because, you know, it felt like game 1 was a bit more of a slow burn. You know, you get a couple fights there at the end. There's like 10 kills total for the Titans. This one is just much higher paced. There again was some fighting right around this point, right? It's kind of even back and forth kill-wise. Then we start to get the team fight, group up, run it down phase, and that's where the Tartarus Titans really started to separate themselves.
There was significantly more fight back from the Oni Warriors this time around. I thought that Cuvo, Fred, and Dardes performed a lot better than I were expecting them to perform into this composition for the Tartarus Titans. But that said, the Oni Warriors draft was good. We knew that from the offset. We knew coming in that this is a draft that can work. It's just whether or not it was able to line up in the late game team fight up against what the Tartarus Titans were bringing. And I think the clips, the kill feed, the everything on the screen right now can kind of put it on full display that it couldn't. Double Cthulhu is a force to be reckoned with, especially when you've got immobile gods like AMC, especially when you've got gods that are so easy to shut down their mobility like Cuvo Freds. Sure, you could turn into a turtle or a ferret, but you're going to get stopped by one of the many knockups coming your way, and that's exactly how it went down more often than not. I can only describe allowing the Tartarus Titans, allowing Paul and Benji to take Morrigan and Cthulhu 2 games in a row
again
as criminal. It's criminal.
Especially when they're separated from one another. It's been a Morrigan first pick, and then 2 picks to the Oni Warriors, and then a Cthulhu second pick. So there's been every opportunity for the Oni Warriors to pick or ban it away. They have chosen to try their own hand at finding answers to this. Decent damage numbers out of Dardes and Vote here in this game. But Layers makes a really big difference. That's 23,000 damage for Layers, and then 7 or so thousand damage from Cuvo Fred. And so it's back to the drawing board now for the Oni Warriors. It seems like Myth, you know, a change of ban priority or pick priority in the first 2 could go a long way. That said, this Titans team is so good at adapting and having different types of compositions up their sleeve. It's certainly not guaranteed. Just because they're playing Morgan Cthulhu doesn't mean that's all they can play. But I think now in Game 3, it's happened to us twice. It's time to flip it around a little bit.
Look, you say that it's not all that they can play, but the Oni Warriors have not put us into a position to
Right.
test that
We don't
just
know.
yet. Test them, Oni Warriors. If you're losing to Morgan Cthulhu, you could stop it. You could stop it with a ban. You could stop it with a pick. It's all about adaptations. And in Game 3, with your backs against the wall, now's the time to do it.
Sounded like the start to a Dr. Seuss story, and I want to hear the end of that when we get back to the green room. Picks and bans for game number 3 is where we will head now, and it's going to be important with the Oni Warriors in the first pick slot here for this game. For now, the priority to change. That said, if both Morgan and Cthulhu are left open to the first picks there for the Tartarus Titans, I imagine they just pick them back to back. But when you've got this priority that the Oni Warriors have, you should make a difference. You should change some stuff up. One thing that's not going to change is Paul playing Hell, and that's just a very dynamic combo. And I'm not sure, and I think I agree with the Oni Warriors on this one. I'm ready to see Paul on that pick.
I got to think he's been tearing up scrims. I mean, I know he's got a history with this god, but the amount of focus and emphasis the Oni Warriors have put on the Hell particularly in this set has been ludicrous. All 3 games so far,
First ban,
Hell
3
has been
games.
banned out first overall by the Oni Warriors, regardless of position
Now
in the draft,
Aphrodite.
first or second pick.
So with Aphrodite being banned out, maybe that land.
There it
Cthulhu.
is.
There we go. So there's the change from the Oni Warriors. You wonder if then that. Oh, and then it's a Morgan. That's what I was going to ask. I was wondering if maybe then Dardes, now in your first pick, you're going to ban away the Aphrodite. That's your way of saying we're going to find some way to take this Morgan away, which would have been a pick for the Oni Warriors. But the Titans are not going to give them that opportunity. So a different look at a composition this time for the Tartarus Titans. And the way that the pick bans broke down here, Miff, a couple priority frontliners made their way through. Odin first and foremost. Geb comes to mind there as well. Nike is still around. That's a pick that the Tartarus Titans have liked in the past as well. And at least through 1 pick and 6 bans, we can say that the Oni Warriors have made the Titans change up their draft.
Yeah, I like going towards Odin in the first slot. You've got decent flex potential, could go jungle, could go solo, could even head over into the support role. I was expecting the Titans to prioritize Sylvanas here, but instead it's Yamoja Kamazot's locked in, and it's a different look from the Tartarus Titans finally. In Game 3, the Oni Warriors forced them to do something different here. It's pressure out of the long lane thanks to Yamoja's support. Kamazot has great scaling. If the Oni Warriors want to, they can go back towards that Olaron, but maybe this Kamazot kind of acts as a deterrent, saying, sure, you could lock in Olaron, but it probably won't do so well because Bat Out of Hell just beats Sanctified Field. All you have to do is blink in, land Vampiric Bats before the Olaron's able to react, and then immediately channel Bat Out of Hell, and you likely will find the kill off of just that damage alone. So we'll see if the Oni Warriors decide to do exactly that. I think that with Odin, though, maybe that's enough to limit Kamazot's, that you could feel comfortable going for something immobile like Olaron or even the AMC again.
And remember, because this is always when the Oni Warriors, now I say always, this is the second best-of-5 set that we've seen this team in. In the existing best-of-5, this is when the Oni Warriors turned things around. They went down 0-2, they won 2 straight, lost in Game 5 to the Scarabs. They're down 0-2, and they bring out Discordia for Dardes, and this is where the tides changed in the Oni Warriors' first set up against the Scarabs when you gave Dardes this Discordia. You're giving something to Kivo Fred that he provides some setup with in the Hun Bats. And so again, I think the Oni Warriors continue to sow this intrigue, and the Discordia for Dardes is maybe at the forefront of that for me. I mentioned Nike still being available. That's what's going to be locked in here for the Tartarus Titans. Titans still needing both of their carries, Mid and Hunter. But you've already got a great front line locked in here, Miff, between Yamoja and Nike, and then some good chase down potential with the Kamazots.
The Titans have shown no weaknesses with their draft so far. They haven't necessarily drafted the faces of this composition just yet. This isn't a Kamazot's composition. That's not how you draft around that pick. He kind of acts as a solo agent, as does Nike. Yamoja as well kind of operates on her own. So the Oni Warriors going to have to try and figure out exactly what this draft the Titan Warriors are trying to build is if they want to address it in the ban phase here. Whereas I'd say the Oni Warriors have kind of showed their hand. You've got Discordia in mid, you've got your Hun bots in the jungle. Both of those picks are semi-deal-withable. That's not a real word, but like you could go for some counter picks. For example, Terra has a great matchup in a Hun bot as well as Discordia because you can lock down the entirety of her leap. Odin, I think, is going to do the most here to influence what the Titans are looking for elsewhere in their draft. That said, these bans for the Tartarus Titans, I think, doing a great job of limiting what the Oni Warriors are going for, whereas the Warriors, the bans they toss out kind of feel like, to me, we just don't want to play against these picks.
Yeah, don't want to play against those two. Surprising, admittedly, that Sylvanas and Geb fall down to the final bans here for the Tartarus Titans. Those are two picks that we've often seen up towards the forefront of the conversation, not only in the support role, but just in the game in general. It's a Hades hover, and not a Hades lock-in. It'll be Chang'e for who we are assuming will be Paul, I would hope so, out of the mid lane. This has been a pick reserved for Zeros. Reserved no longer. Paul is going to get a look at the Chang'e here for the rest of his team. And we'll wait on the Hunter pick for the Tartarus Titans down the stretch. Are you excited, though, for the Titans and the mid laner that they've chosen to draft here in Game 3?
It synergizes well with Camazotz in that it is a lot of fight potential. Discordia doesn't have the best escape on the planet, so the ultimate from Chang'e covers the entirety of the stealth field. It's the length of the dash as well, so Chang'e, who is already likely playing in melee range, should be able to have decent follow-up. Camazotz chase down potential incredibly high as well. But my pick for the best guy in the game right now has been Terra. I've made no qualms sharing that with everybody. And finally, for the first time today, she's being looked at by the Oni Warriors. Potential to lock in here. And I said earlier that Terra has a great counter matchup in a Hunbots, but the same is true of the inverse. Her synergy with Hunbots is incredibly high as well, because Fear No Evil procs Earthen Fury either against you or with you. So now, Hunbot's ultimate is essentially a burst damage ultimate as well as a great form of AoE CC.
Needforseat.com, by the way, is where you want to head for one of these beauties. Look at all of its majesty there, Mifflin. It actually shows so well on camera as well.
Good lord.
I mean, you could just stream from some other room entirely and just have that.
It's a conversation piece.
It really is. You know, you walk into a room that really stands out, gets the ball rolling, you're nervous about having guests over. Just have a Smite Maxonomic chair sitting in the middle of your room, and you're bound to have something to talk about for the rest of the night. Maybe Neilma's room, I'm not sure. We'll find out at some point here. At any rate, Neilma's pick has been locked in, and that's the Terra Heimdall to round out the draft for the Oni Warriors. And it just feels like a nice, well-rounded composition for the Oni Warriors, doesn't it? You give Nika something good on the Odin, set up, lock down, good damage throughout the rest of those picks. And for the first time this set, it does not feel entirely like you're fighting an uphill battle if you're the Oni Warriors. You're not going up against the Cthulhu, the Morrigan. You've got a good draft coming out of the pick and ban phase and a good chance to get a win here in this set.
So if this is what the Tartarus Titans bring out when you've tested them and banned out some of their favorite picks like the Cthulhu and the Morrigan, I think you should be doing that a little bit more often. Maybe don't wait until a Game 3 situation.
Watch this somehow be scarier, though?
Yeah, if they just dominate, that's on me. And this draft does have the potential to do so. It's a spearhead composition if set does get locked in. It's aggression across the board. Even inside of the solo lane, jungle rotates out, Chang'e's W-keying, set in the long lane's W-keying, Camazotz maybe the most W-key jungler besides Erlang Shen. So the Titans have the potential to run away with the early, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, whereas a late-game composition comprised of Cthulhu and Morrigan is probably going to dominate the late game as a foregone conclusion. The Oni Warriors have done a very good job in Game 3 of addressing some of the issues here. Well, that changes things. The W-key composition is no longer exactly just that. Now, it's a Olorun composition. That is how much Olorun changes the face of your draft. So now it's, can this Chang'e facilitate this pick in the late game? How well are the Tartarus Titans going to deal with the dive of the Oni Warriors? That dive is incredibly strong between Odin, Hunbots, and Terra. I think that it can work, but with Olorun, I'm not sure how much I like this Chang'e pick now.
Well, this is where we always wondered. I mean, Olorun's been highly prioritized, but might feel better later on the draft once you know there's not all the CC immunity running at you. There's definitely no 2 Cthulhus in this draft. Some of the popular CC immune counters haven't been drafted by the Oni Warriors here. You look at what the Oni Warriors have drafted. Let's zoom in on Sanctified Field specifically here. Are there enough answers in your mind that the Oni Warriors can still win a team fight if we see Olorun hit a big Sanctified Field?
I think so, because there are ways for the Oni Warriors to deal with and play around Sanctified Field. If you're worried about Olorun dominating a late-game teamfight, have your Odin blink cage him and then walk away and just leave him there inside of a circle of spears in his own Sanctified Fields. If you're worried about Olorun dominating a teamfight, blink Fear No Evil. Force the beads, force the Sanctified Field, disengage immediately afterward. The only major concern I have for the Oni Warriors up against Oleron specifically is this Terra. Every single one of her abilities is incredibly telegraphed in that she threw up her monolith. She probably wants to dash through it. What if I drop Sanctified Field right there? Her dash got slower. I'm probably not getting hit by that anymore. And also, you used your dash. You're probably stuck in the Sanctified Field as well. So that is one concern. But that concern is not too heavy on my mind because Terra's got some of the wildest survivability in the game.
And that's not the only unique pick that the Tartarus Titans have here. The Chang'e we've talked about a little bit. For Paul, it is pretty unique. It's not something we've seen, at least in the last 6 games. I'd wager even longer than that. Maybe gets a bit of a Paul buff where you give a player this good a little bit extra benefit of the doubt. My problem is when we've seen Chang'e, it's been with the Valkyries, and it's given them a little bit of a boost, but we haven't seen all that much success out of it. I think like a 33% win rate is where Chang'e stands right now. Do you think, though, that Paul is in a position here in this game, now that you see the entire composition from the Oni Warriors, to facilitate not only with the ultimate, but deal good damage, maybe get some healing numbers in there as well?
I think so. The healing is going to be good for the Titans thanks to Yamoja on her own. Paul can add on to that as well in these engagements. The counter healing, the anti-heal that Chang'e brings, I think maybe a little bit more so of a conversation starter, especially against something like Earthern Fury from Terra on the other end. If the engagement factor is Blink and Hunbot's ult, you could just like Moonlight Tango dance out of it immediately. If you're still inside of Fear No Evil from the second ability of Chang'e, you still have beads, you likely have Aegis as well. I think that there's a lot of fight potential from the Tartarus Titans, at least in the mid 3v3, but late game, I'm not sure how this team fight's going to look between Chang'e and Oleron together. I don't think Chang'e is going to be the main target of a lot of this aggression. I think Oleron almost always acts as a lightning rod for your team. Is Chang'e the type of pick that you want to have that space created for? She's got decent damage output, but she's not matching some of these other more standard mages. I'm excited to see this one. This draft, to me, from the Tartarus Titans, almost says we're looking to dominate the early.
It does, and that it's a scary team to be facing
Sans
against when they're considering kind of dominating things early, because the Titans, a multifaceted team to say the least. One of the big pieces of the Oni Warriors puzzle in this game is that Hunbats, and the guy piloting that Hunbats this time of year needs to get the ball rolling a little bit. Cuvo Fred has had 6 kills in his last 6 games, and so you need a little bit more than that on the jungle, according to our website. I'm going off of our stats. Not been great from Cuvo Fred. A forgettable game in Game 2, 1-7 on the Erlang Shen. How pivotal do you think that this Hunbats is to making this composition work for the Warriors?
Well, more so now that you dropped that nuke of a stat on me, man. 6 games, 6 kills. Cuvo Fred, he's got something to prove here.
Got something to prove, and Game 3 is the time to do it. You don't want to be 0-2 in the group. The Warriors staving that off in Game 3 against the Titans.
It's a big do-or-die situation here for the Warriors. And, man, Aggro, one thing that I'm looking at here, that I don't know how this got passed up by the desk, but imagine getting caught inside a Sanctified Field and you're the second or third person hit by that waxing moon out of Chang'e. You're just dead if you don't have beads at that point, man.
J-Mac, you've got some obsession with the 5th person getting hit by.
I said
what
second
games
or third.
are you?
I
okay,
said second
sure.
Or third.
How many 3-man waxing moons have we seen in the? Look, you're right.
We've seen a few 2 or 3-man ones. We haven't seen a 5 yet. Thankfully, we haven't seen a 5.
It just doesn't happen. It just can't, because
you're a crazy god, man.
You're not wrong. Waxing moon slams the people behind the first 2 targets, but yeah, look, if you're caught in Sanctified Field, you get stunned for 1 second, you're dead the vast majority of the time. I do think that the Oleron Chang'e combo can be pretty potent in that way. I think that they could work pretty well together, but I liked Mifflin's point of, is Chang'e the type of god you want to create space for? I'm not convinced.
Maybe Chang'e can create some space for herself here. Dardes just narrowly avoids the Vampire Bats out of layers and gets back to safety under the Tier 1 tower, but Paul's already looking to scrap early, and so is Aurora and Cyclone. Vote down to 25% health, but Neil gonna help him and get some clear fight right back at them. The Titans, they're already looking to do some boxing early on.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, look, the Titans, they can smell blood in the water. They know they just have to win one more, that the Warriors are in a reverse sweep situation, but it's Neil and Fred. They did it a lot last year, so we know they have the capability of doing so. But I really like the Titans draft overall. I mean, the Chang'e pick I've always been pretty lukewarm on, but I think it can really fit Paul's playstyle well. It kind of plays in the late game, especially if he goes Blink at level 12. It can kind of play almost like a Hebo with the way that you want to initiate fights. And I think it can work.
Benji under fire on the right side of the map. Nika and Cubo can just walk right into the tower and pick up a nice easy kill for the Warriors and finally get a little bit of momentum towards their side of the map, towards their team here. First blood goes to the only Warriors here just shy of 2 minutes.
And don't forget the performance that Nika had earlier this year on this Odin, where I've never seen a player 1v9 a game like that in the SPL. Like, top 5 individual SPL performances I've ever seen for that Odin pick. So we'll see if Nika can reprise it, and he gets off to a good start with getting first blood. Good pressure provided by Fred, blinked in, slowed down Benji after that jump was down, and made it easy kill.
Neil really wants to try and help defend this purple buff away from Aurora, but Cyclone will do his part in just full clearing out the wave while Aurora keeps Neil and Vote busy on this side of the map. This purple buff will not go down just yet. Stun comes through, ends up hitting both of them, but the purple buff does get secured by Vote. Cyclone throws a bit of damage over to Vote and forces the Bifrost out early. But Aurora, man, this whole team just as a whole, they're scrapping.
They really are, and Aurora back on this Emoja. Love that pick for him. I think that this is a really good pick for Aurora. I mean, probably his name isn't coming up all the time with the best emojis in the league, you know, the wrong views of the world, but it should, because I do think Aurora is that level of good on this pick. I really like him on it. Think that it fits his play style. Thought he played really well on it in Game 1, and expecting more of the same here in Game 3. Now, it isn't as devastating for that Rivers Rebuke as it was in Game 1, but you don't see drafts that are that good for Umoja every single day. You still can lock in the Terra really easily, and as long as you're trying to you can really just use it as a peel tool for Olarun, because that's one thing that, you know, the pros do really well with Rivers Rebuke that the average player might not, is the ability to they just kind of poke in and out of each side of a Rivers Rebuke wall, and so it's blocking auto attacks, it's making sure that abilities that stop on walls aren't hitting you, but that you can hit them that entire time, and you can use it in that way instead of a more trapping style like we saw in Game 1.
Well, one thing that we saw, I should say, maybe something that we didn't see a whole lot of in Games 1 and 2 by the Warriors was anti-heal to deal with the sustain out of the composition the Titans had. Maybe begs question here is, how much more critical is this anti-heal now that you have a battle mage putting out some of that healing compared to something like a Sylvanas, which is not going to build a lot of power, but will have some decent sustain in the kit.
Well, the Warriors need a ton of anti-heal in this game, because Kamazats, you need to anti-heal. Chang'e, you really need to anti-heal. Umoja, you really need to anti-heal. And you could stand to anti-heal the Olarun. So all those things, the Warriors should be having a ton of it, but it's also very easy for them to build with this comp. They've got a much easier way to build it than in the past.
Well, to fight, it's a 2v2. It's a Fear No Evil drop by Cubo Fred, and a cage out of Nika. Bat out of hell from Layers to close the gap. Nika has to use the shield, but he doesn't have much shield left. And the basic out of Layers will make sure to clean up the job and make it a one-game kill here now for the Tartarus Titans. Another purple invade on the left side. Comes up empty-handed, and Cubo still sticking around on the right. Does manage to make it out.
Yeah, and secured the blue. Took it away from Benji, so he won't have a blue for this laning little next few minutes in the laning phase. But despite the first blood for the Warriors, it's the Titans up about 600 gold in Layers, starting to really put some pressure on the map really effectively. I think that Kamazats is a great pick for Layers. I mean, he was really aggressive these first 2 games, and Cam is a god that just lets you get away with being really over-aggressive at all points in the game. Doesn't matter if it's early or late. It's pretty much impossible to kill this Kama. So I love that pick for Layers, and I think that there's enough CC here for the Titans to make it work. You know, you've got enough pressure on beads for these backliners between the Chang'e in particular, but the Nike as well, that you don't need to worry about being too CC light, that you can go for a low CC pick like this.
It's a 1-1 split on the Harpies. Paul and Aurora will team up in the mid against Neil and Dardes. The health bars looking a little worse for the Oni Warriors. Paul, he'll send the rabbit back, at least to base. I didn't see the rabbit sticking by him, so I assume he'd send it back to grab something there. May just be even potions, wards. You can grab just about anything there with that Chang'e by sending and utilizing that passive.
Yeah, it's really nice to have whenever you're in the mid lane. Can stay out a lot longer. Make sure you're getting to your farm, but you need a hefty amount of MP5 in order to really do that realistically. And Chronos Pendant is a good start, but would expect that to be a Lotus Crown next that will help in that department. After you get those 2 items, you can afford to stay out pretty far.
Cyclone, half health just from boxing out against Vote. The Solaran does not win the early boxing matches, but will get stunned out by Aurora. Aurora caught inside the walls and stunned out by Neil this time around, and Cyclone does want to try and turn some of the fight right back. Sanctified Field drop. Neil and Vote caught inside, but Neil is able to walk out
Rivers
by
Rebuke.
his own. Here's the Rivers Rebuke right out.
Oh, nice.
But no damage dealt to him, so he's able to blink right on and maybe be able to turn the fight right back at Aurora as the Earth and Fury comes out and a blink in from Layers to at least make it a 1-for-1.
Yeah, but Vote's going to be able to survive, so that's a good play there from the Warriors. I think they demolished in that 2v2, and it's really just because Neil was able to blink out of that Rivers Rebuke. Cyclone couldn't get an auto on him or a little 2 meteor in order to make sure that he was in combat still.
Layers jumps over. Thought maybe Vote would try and go for the fight right back, but no ultimate to his name, so he will have to sit back as his purple buff does get stolen away by Layers and the Tartarus Titans. With another kill up here and another 1-for-1 trade, keeps that gold lead relatively even compared to what it was prior. Still about 700 up. Paul in the mid lane with no beads to his name, used the Aegis to get out of the apple, and will be able to live with quite a bit of extra health. Turns fight back around, a Waxing Moon onto Dardes, and then the healing damage right after. Fires it back, but now Paul's the one in danger except for some healing out of Aurora to keep him through. Neil wants to close out this kill, and Paul is playing with fire in this mid lane going back in.
But this is exactly the type of tightrope that Paul loves to trapeze across. I don't know what trapezing is, but I'm using it anyways. You can hold that. Paul with the 2v1 victory. No beads for him on the Chang'e, but actually really liked the way he sequenced his Aegis. Doesn't use the Aegis to immune the big part of the Discordia ult damage. Instead, spams Aegis out of the Fear No Evil and knows that he can always react to that Discordia apple with the 2. So ends up working really well, immunes a lot of damage in that fight between the Aegis and the 2. And then that Waxing Moon turnaround on the Dardes, just excellent damage coming from this Chang'e, who now has a 2-level lead. And like I said, I've been a pretty long time Chang'e mid hater, but when you get a lead like this pick feels unstoppable because you do so much damage that even though you put yourself out of position to step up to deal that damage, it doesn't matter because no one can kill you before you can kill them.
And Paul's got a Lotus Crown because of that team fight, so he's got his second item fully online. He had some physical defense, some extra power, and then MP5 sustain you were talking about earlier to essentially allow Paul to just sit in this lane for as long as he wants. Even Aurora still working towards what I imagine will be a Lotus Crown of his own, so having 2 of those to kind of bounce back and forth between each other. And we'll see if Aurora does elect to finish that item up, or maybe go for one of these other helmets, but Dardes has to sit under this tier 1 tower because there are 3 players from the Tartarus Titans here just staring him down in mid.
Cyclone going to play aggressive as well, but Vote going to drop the ult first.
Going to be a quick beads, and a beads out of Vote to try and get him away, but so long to get out of that Bifrost. The 1 versus 1 trades both ults and both relics out of the Hunters, and maybe sets up now for a Scorpion to be stolen by the Titans.
And they will secure it. I think that trade on the left favors Vote, even though he lost the trade for sure and lost the purple. Getting Olaron Beats ult is just more valuable, and Fred should do exactly this. Just skulk along this left-hand side, try and find a blink ult. Now, it is warded by the Titans, and they know he's here.
It's going to be a blink in from Neil. The root is good against Cyclone. The wall just off the mark, but Cubo with the Fear No Evil slams against the wall and pummels him to death. It's a big turnaround kill for the Oni Warriors to pick off the Hunter of the Titans, and maybe they can get some more here. Aurora does get a stun, and that will dissuade the Warriors from going for another kill. But maybe with Layers here, that could start up another potential fight as Layers goes in deep. Bat out of hell even used to try and chase down Cubo Fred, but with that Monolith, is just enough to hold him away.
And that Lotus Crown proc as well end up helping out as Vote get a TP in right in front of Layers and Aurora. Aurora should have the Omi for a Riptide now, but Layers has already given up the chase, so ends up being a 1-for-1 overall, or excuse me, a 1-for-0 with Cyclone falling to that dive, and that's exactly what should happen to Olaron without beads or ultimate. Gotta punish him. Can't let him get off the hook for that.
Yeah, that was one of those downsides in game 1. You know, we saw Vote trade one or the other, but Cyclone had to use both of them in that last fight.
Yeah.
And they have, what, relative, I believe it's almost the exact same cooldown length between those two, so it's going to be a long time. As you can see, 60 seconds before he gets those beads up, and close to that here, maybe closer to 30 seconds before Cyclone does get the ult back up. It's 3-3, 11 minutes in. The Titans still maintaining this really small 1,000, 1,500 gold lead they've held since most of the match.
In a good position still, despite all these fights going pretty evenly. Titans still in a pretty decent position. I think that we've talked about the Titans outscaling in these late game scenarios in the previous few comps. I think they scale about even by my estimation, because you've got this Nike and this Yamoja that provide good presence, but Odin Terra is such a great team fight composition, and Fear No Evil. I mean, the Warriors have really good tools, but this Olorun is going to be a thorn in their side for sure. That's the one thing that makes me think that the Titans might be able to compete if we were to airdrop them in a 30-minute game completely tied in every single way. I think this Olorun could potentially be a difference maker, but if they can take care of this Olorun, if they can effectively zone him away or kill him early, poke him out, then I like the Warriors' chances.
A rare sight to behold here, Aggro. Because Paul picked up that Lotus Crown, Aurora actually opted to sell his helmet and instead work towards a Pridwin for his second item. Not very often that we see players as a whole, aside from, say, like Gilgamesh passive giving you an item that you really don't care about and you just go ahead and get rid of that. But we do see that item get sold out here by Aurora. Instead, again, highlighting towards going towards in that Pridwin. Oni Warriors setting up on this left-hand side, but so are the Titans. As Aurora and Neil Ma, once again, these two supports really just love punching each other.
May as well be a little aggressive and try and get some positional advantage, but don't think it's going to amount to a whole lot without people coming to help. Will be a split on those Oracles, but Layer's on the way and has Blink.
Stun does hit Neil. River's Rebuke comes out to try and hold them in place, or at least lock down where they can run. A Fear No Evil dropped in the middle of that. But Neil is able to walk out just for now. Still needs a little bit of time and a little bit of distance to go. But he does get through. Cyclone eats the sword out of Vote. And that'll be some good return damage back to the Hunter. Neil makes it out, but now the Fury can be started up by the Titans.
And there's no Fear No Evil and no Earth and Fury. Those are big ultimates to not have. Fred is now nowhere near as scary on this Hun Bats, but because Nika makes a good early rotation and Benji calls it, Benji not on the way, that means the Titans might not be as keen right away.
Gold Fury does get pulled. It's going to be a little bit of time before the Warriors are able to respond back to it. It's already down to a quarter health, and with the Sanctified Field dropping in, the Titans can grab the Gold Fury. Neil dashes in, but to no avail. The first objective of the game goes to the Titans.
Love that play by the Titans. Benji's like, hey, I'm pushing, Nika's probably coming. The Titans go, oh, all right, we totally won't do it then, with like the little shifty eyes. And then as soon as Nika starts rotating back towards the right-hand side, and the Titans don't have wards on him, but they just have the general game sense. This is probably when he's heading back right. And everyone is probably split back up and gone to farm. Why not just pull it? We'll see what happens. And, you use Sanctified Field, which is a big cooldown, of course, but to get that first big objective of the game seems well worth it.
The Warriors do answer in kind. They get a Pyromancer to their name, so they at least trade out one objective for the other. Gold for gold and a little bit of movement speed coming out of the base. The Warriors may not be too upset about it. Again, it's another battle for these purple buffs. Cyclone Spin really wants to make sure to secure it, and he'll at least keep Vote away by leashing it back and forth. 15 minutes in, still a relatively even game here. The Titans have pulled a slightly larger gold lead, only still to around a tune of 2,000, the largest gold lead we've seen here in game number 3. But Paul, this is the one I'm keeping my eyes on. He's still been 2 levels up over Dardes consistently. And he goes back, and how do you feel about this Ethereal Staff as the third item out of him?
I really like it. I think E-Staff early is good. No Soul Gem, which is something that I'm happy to see, but E-Staff just gives you some protection in the form of health, CCR, good power, a good proc that feels really good to use. I think that overall this is a pretty good bridge item for you to get at the early to more mid-game stages of the match. I think that E-Staff is a pretty good item, especially for a god like Chang'e that's actually going to make good use of that HP with how close she has to be to deal that damage.
Scorpion stolen away by the Titans, stripping that off the left side of the map from the Oni Warriors. And Cyclone and Aurora pushed up towards this left lane to try and put some pressure on the tier 1, while Paul makes sure to zone Neil Ma and continue getting some of that mid lane farm. It is a tier 1 spellbook picked up by Paul for a 4th item, and maybe a little bit more here now on the left side. Vote gets caught out, but he avoids the stun out of Aurora, but right behind them is Neil to try and bail him out. Ultimate expended by the Hunter, and Neil diving in has already lost half of his health, trying to save his Hunter's life and buy him a little bit of a way out. Oni Warriors do make it through, but Cyclone Spin and Aurora still stick around, even with Dardes here.
And look at this, Benji chasing Fred all the way under his Phoenix. Will lose the beads,
but
but
Neil steps up too far, and Cyclone Spin punishes him for it, and now Vote has to go back while Dardes sits by and watches.
Yeah, brutal sequence there for the Warriors. I don't know how Benji was able to chase down Fred that far, but it means Fred can't come help on this left-hand side. Layers is here. It makes it easy with the blink in order to get on top of him and secure that purple plus the kill itself. Cyclone really doing a ton of damage early on in this game, and I gotta say, I like this build. You know, normally I'm not huge on Bancroft's talent, but Pythags is lower on my list than even Bancroft's the vast majority of the time. And these early Pythags for the Olorun players, all it does is lean into the identity of, I am not very good right now, but I will be good later. And I think going with something like Bancroft's to actually bolster your early game and actually be a threat at the 2-item spike instead of at the 3-item spike feels a lot better to me, so that you could actually use it to bully. And you saw his damage on Vote, forcing that ultimate away. I think that Cyclone's been doing a good job. I mean, both these hunters have been trading really effectively. They're the 2 top player damage, and I think Vote's been playing super well on this Heimdall as well. So excited to see how those 2 duel continues into the late game.
Yeah, normally even at this stage of the game, it's still typically the solo laners who are topping the charts in damage, but it is both of these hunters. After going back to base, Cyclone does pick up Telkine's ring and then tier 1 towards another ring. And it's actually not a Mannequin Scepters that we've been seeing so often on these mage ADCs like the Sol and Olorun. Instead opts to grab a Gilded Arrow for his starter item. Nika maybe in a little bit of danger on this right side, but it is an Odin. He can't just drop Cage, and that'll pretty much be the end of the fight right there.
Yep, that's Cage, but that's fine. Titan's not concerned about that. I mean, it is a short cooldown for the Cage, but still, you didn't expend anything to lose it, so not too bad.
Nika still over here with Benji and Layers. They really want to keep this Odin back so they can start taking more of this jungle away. Another Scorpion started up by the Titans on the Warrior side of the map. The Hunters continue to have their little 1v1 scuffles here. Cyclone just making sure to keep Vote busy on this left side of the map more than anything else.
Vote's doing a lot of damage right now, but Cyclone getting there as well. Telkine's done for him as he stole away that purple yet again. Just gets it with the 2 shots, and that's a little bit annoying for Vote because at this point in the game, you don't have, 3 attack speed items for Vote, so he's actually a little bit higher on attack speed than some hunters would be in this exact position. But having that purple buff up your attack speed for something like an Oni Fury fight would have felt really nice. It's actually a nice play by Cyclone to deny it.
It's going to be a quick pull of the Oni Fury by the Warriors. Dardes and Vote are here. Cuvo Fred in the back line does still have Fear No Evil, but Benji is going to try and zone everyone else away. Cuvo goes in to steal it away. The Oni Warriors do manage to grab it, but how many of them can make it out? It's an ult by Benji to try and catch out Cuvo Fred. The stun from Aurora only manages to hit Neil, but Benji is just not giving up.
Again, but that has the Earth and Fury ready to go. Apple lands onto Cyclone spin, and the Warriors have retreated to their tier 2 tower. Really good play there from Fred. Love his decision to just blink in and force everyone out with Fear No Evil, and the Oni Fury resets to him. And he's like, all right, that's fine, I'll secure it. Because everyone else from the Titans is going to be zoned. No one's going to be close enough in order to stop him. And that's a key get there for the Warriors, finally showing up on an objective fight.
Titans wanted this tier 1 tower, but there's just too many members of the Warriors standing by. And they'll hold them off. Instead, it'll just be the Oni Fury minions now pushing up in favor of the Oni Warriors. They make sure to secure the Fury that is under their name at the very least. Paul level 19 on this Chang'e, 20 minutes in, almost towards that level 20 mark, along with Benji, who has just tipped over. So any moment, Paul can go back. I gotta imagine with this Kondo gem, probably Gem of Focus, probably gonna be the call for the Chang'e.
Yeah, Gem of Focus feels really good. Just getting extra movement speed, you get some mitigation, you get some extra damage. I mean, it just feels so good on Chang'e because your cooldowns are low as it is. Doesn't have a ton of CDR, only the 20%, plus, of course, the Chronos Pendant passive. But, you can get another 10% from a power potion later on. He could go more in that 6th item.
Does he do it again? Yes, he does. Cuvo, the one-man army at these objectives. The Titans cannot seem to secure it when this man is standing around. But the important thing to highlight there is now Cuvo doesn't have an ultimate if the Titans decide to go for a fight.
Yeah, I think I might group and push T1 on the back of that. I mean, Fear No Evil is such an important ability to have that not having it means that I kind of want to fight. But the wave clear from the Warriors is good. Terra wave clear, excellent with the interaction between the 2-1. And you've got Discordia as well, who can do it from a safe enough distance. So it's going to be hard to just siege into this Warriors team. Plus, you've got Heimdall with that giant AoE slow that you have to walk through. So I like the Warriors' decision, even without Fear No Evil, to try and be here to defend.
Well, the question earlier in the game was going to be how much anti-heal do the Warriors pick up? The answer is a lot of it to deal with the sustain out of the Titans. The first one going to be used is that cage out of Nika to hold Paul in place, but Paul doesn't seem too worried about this. He'll take the apple and immune pretty much all the damage, but Cyclone is the one getting poked out by that strike from the Discordia. Dardes finally getting some big damage numbers up in these fights and poking out some of these carries.
The poke's not going to be good enough against this comp. You've got Yamoja and Chang'e. That is too much healing, plus Olaron has the 3 built in as well, so that's not going to be enough.
Back to the tier 1 tower, and it's Benji in the back line with an ultimate. Catches 3 and leaps in the middle of 3, and a River's Rebuke out of Aurora to hold a couple of members in place. Neil has nowhere left to run, and caught inside the Sanctified Field, so he goes down. Damage against Nika is good, and Vote has to use the Aegis as Benji continues to run through the back line, but it's Kuvo Fred with a Fear No Evil to separate 4 of them.
Lair still in the front line, no ultimate for him, no ults ready for the Tartarus Titans, but they have brute forced their way down the mid lane. They get the tier 1 tower, they'll get the tier 2 as well, and just using that sustain. And you're right that the Warriors have a lot of anti-heal. Cursed on, Brawlers, Pestilence, Divine, they've got it all. But it just isn't enough because the Titans can reset the fight, back it up, go again, back it up, go again, back it up, go again, and eventually they're able to make it work on that siege. Beautifully done, using that sustain to its fullest.
With everybody backing on the Tartarus Titans, the Oni Warriors going for a bit of a Hail Mary here to try and take away this Fire Giant. A quick call by the Warriors may finally net them a big objective to steal this one away from the Tartarus Titans. Even after losing the fight in mid, you lost both your towers, you lost a couple of players, but you get the big objective on the map, Fire Giant to the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching the Titans, takes them a long time to get that tier 2, then they walk all the way back to the Scorpion in order to back. And I was thinking, can't the Warriors just go to Fire right now? Like, they've got good enough DPS. They've got Discordia, who's very good on objectives because she can just sit in her erratic behavior cloud and get a lot of that going. And then you've got a Heim with Wind Demon done and Exi done. Like, just a big mistake by the Titans to all 5 back at the exact same time. Can't make that mistake. The Warriors, even though they've struggled this year, it's a team of veterans. They're not going to let you get away with that.
And this 1,000 gold lead the Titans had is essentially negligible now with this Fire Giant buff around the Oni Warriors' waist. Gold Fury set to respawn here in just a few seconds. You can see both teams are already starting to group up around it, but it is just a regular old Gold Fury, not a Primal, not an Oni, so they're just going here mostly for that gold benefit.
I mean, the Titans don't really have to fight this, but I also don't hate them fighting it. The one thing is the lack of relics on their side. No Aegis for Paul, no beads for Aurora. I think I would be pretty conservative with my contest here on this Gold Fury because you've got Oracle Vision, you've got perfect info. Let's just wait and see what they do. And if they wait long enough for us to get our relics back, then we feel good.
Soul Reaver for Paul finished up. Gemma Focus finished up, and it is going to be the Sundering Axe out of Benji as he is 5 slotted like a majority of his team here. Gold Fury was looked at between these two teams, but now they're going to back away from it at least for now. Instead, it'll be the Oni Warriors pushing up the left side of the map. They'll take the tier 1 tower. They could easily try and take that tier 2, but with a couple members of the Titans standing by, not willing to make that risky play yet.
And Layers, once he'll get his speed, you can see him hanging around, but he is going to get called back to try and defend this Gold Fury. Vote didn't have his relics. I think that's why the Warriors didn't want to start the objective. Now he does.
Gonna be Gold Fury down to a quarter health, and the Warriors have full control over it, but the Warriors do manage to secure it out. Neil takes a little bit of damage. A Riptide out of Aurora holds him in place, and a River's Rebuke locks them out, but Neil does have a path out if he needs to, and he will squeak on by. The Tartarus Titans, they come up empty-handed in their defense against the Fury.
Yeah, it seems like all the Titans aren't really on the page of we should be fighting here. Just back it up. It was a 1,000 gold lead. Now it's even a 600 gold lead or so for the Warriors, which is not anything to be worried about. You can lose this tier 1 as well. It's not the end of the world. I think tier 2s are what you really have to worry about defending and being strong for those. So we'll see what the Titans decide to do now.
It's a full 5 strong on the Warriors, and all ultimates up. Aurora doesn't have his, and all relics are up for the teams. Paul gets hit by some damage. Layers has to leap away. The tier 2 is slowly starting to whittle away here for the Tartarus Titans, but only down to half health. Does it drop? Vote resustaining up back with his team and on the minions. And this fight for the tier 2 is not over yet by the Warriors.
No, they still have all that healing on the side of the Titans, so they can stay here all day. How long do the Warriors want to stay here is the question. 40 seconds on this Fire Giant. They're not making a whole lot of headway.
Benji leaps in, and the backline, it's Nika who dropped down the cage. A stun does hit Vote, but they're not too concerned. Instead, it's a Fear No Evil out of Cuvo that slams against Aurora and Benji and forces the backliners to walk just a little bit further back. But even with the tower going down, they're not satisfied with it yet. It's going to be the Titans instead diving in. Sanctified Fields holds Neil in place for what feels like eternity, and they finally come up with something in their favor here. The Tartarus Titans get one.
Only got one, though. That's not really that much. To sacrifice Neil in the face of 4 ults and a tier 2 tower, I think the Warriors probably feeling pretty good about how that siege went. The Titans just don't have easy initiation with this comp, particularly in lane. You've got the Emoja walls in the jungle, but in lane, how are you really getting these fights started? Benji jumped in, but at the exact same time, Nika was in the enemy backline, blinked in, caged them all off. Really good timing from Nika on that initiation on his side. I think you're really just looking for Benji to 3 someone or blink ult. You know, those are your initiation tools. And the chase isn't that great from the Titans either because they've got Chang'e, who doesn't have good range at all as a mage. So I think the Titans really, they do a lot of things well with this composition, but I think we saw some of the weakness there in that last siege.
Well, the Fire Giant set to spawn here in about 20 seconds. So everything that the Warriors were able to gain from that fire, well, 3 towers and a Gold Fury and maybe 1 kill out of all of that. Not the biggest profit, but at least keeping that one out of the Titans and slowing down the momentum that they were starting to slowly build up there. Instead, now with the Fire Giant coming back up, it'll be the Warriors who start getting the defensive positioning around it, but ward control in the pit itself does hold here for the Tartarus Titans as Benji walks up and clears out another ward with him and Aurora.
But it's still vision for the Tartarus Titans right now. So Aurora trying to defend this sentry, will successfully do so. And it's the Titans with the vision advantage, at least for the moment, despite the Warriors having position.
Benji and Nika are just slapping each other around right now while Neil sits by and makes sure to keep the carries sustained up under that pit. Finally, that ward does go down, so the Warriors have some kind of vision in this Fire Giant zone. Benji just keeps eating this damage out of Dardes, and he's slowly been working his way up the damage chart, though still quite a bit ahead of him is Vote, about 3K up. Even Benji sticking pretty high up on that damage chart, 21K out of this Nike.
As expected for the solo laner, but remember that it wasn't a ton of damage in lane, that it was the Hunters that were top damage during the laning phase, so Benji's damage a little bit more relevant, I'd say, than most of the time that we see solo laners topping the charts. He's been able to create a lot of space on this Nike, but it's not getting easier for him because he's full build now, and both the Warriors backliners have just finished off some key items, namely the starter upgrade and the chin size now for Vote. And Dardes is still missing a full item right now, so he's going to be able, assuming that's a 20% pen item, he's going to be able to do a lot more damage to Benji in the future.
Cyclone did get to go back and pick up his Diamond Arrow, while Aurora is being controlled in the back by Nika and Neil. Some CC to hold him down, but Layers in the back, jumps in, gets a big damage up against Vote. The Bat out of Hell, not quite enough damage to finish the job. The Bifrost gets him out, and a cage out of Nika at least zones the rest of the Titans away, but Benji is not done yet. He'll jump into the back line of the Warriors, and a River's Rebuke out of Aurora will zone away the fight.
But Fred still has that Blink ultimate. Look at him lurking on this left-hand side. The Titans are going to group to heal. Can Fred punish them whenever they do?
That's a big question here, but Paul still holding on to his ult. Even Cyclone holds on to the Sanctified Field, and that all that health that was whittled away has now been brought back up by the Titans. That sustain out of this Umoja, out of this Chang'e, is keeping them up, and has returned us to a state of even here between these two teams. A continuous battle around this Fire Giant.
And Vote was the target there from Layers, but Layers just not quite ready to do the one shot. Needs a Heartseeker, I think, if he's going to be able to really, truly try and just one-tap someone off the old Blink 2-1, couple swoops from the ultimate, and Vote was able to hold on to both his relics, but did force the ult from Neil, which is obviously huge. That Earth and Fury, big deal.
So Warriors again starting up the enhanced Fire Giant now, 31 minutes in. Cyclone is nowhere near the fight, and there's 4 Warriors lurking around, but Layers, Benji, and Aurora are here for the Titans to at least hold it out. Cage comes out from Nika, some damage out of the mid laner is going to get a leap away by Layers. Paul has rejoined the fight, and one gets sent through the realms by Vote. Up in the battle of hell out of Layers to get some damage, but Benji, as soon as he crashes back in, used that ultimate for extra health.
And he used it all right. He instantly went from looking like he's dead to putting a lot of damage on the back line of the Warriors and forcing them back. So not the target that you necessarily want to try and group around. The Titans, that was a little risky. They sent both Paul and Cyclone to the left-hand side. Cyclone to try and solo gold, and Paul to get his red buff. And the Warriors had good game sense that they might be able to sneak something away during that time, but Paul and Cyclone able to get back in time. This front line from the Titans, pretty staunch, pretty difficult to punch through them.
Paul will sit inside the mist, not to really gain much here other than just looking cool, standing by. 32 minutes in, the enhanced fire giant on the map. The Oni Warriors did start it up, but now the Titans are aware that they're willing to pull this objective. They've got all 5 of their teammates here around the fire giant just to make sure that it doesn't go south. Neil starts it up, and it's already going down. Vote is already starting to chunk through this objective.
Doesn't take long, but immediately they turn to Nika.
Another cage out of Nika holds Paul and Benji in place, but they're not too worried as they break down one wall, and Benji goes right to the back line. Triple ultimate, and the golden apple comes out, but a Fear No Evil out of Cuvo Fred separates the fight, and Layers is all by himself up with Benji up in the bat out of hell to get some damage, and he used the final swipe to escape and grab the Pyromancer, but the Titans reset.
Man, feels like neither team is just doing any damage until Dardes.
Layers finds him with the damage. Dardes goes down. The Titans have a one-man advantage in the fight. Nika down to half health, has to use the shield to try and walk back through, but the Titans are surging forward. Layers out of the realms, gets bursted away and trades it out 1-for-1.
Vote making it happen, but this time knocked up. Cyclone Spin gonna take him down, and now it's the Titans grouping and pushing as 4. Eventually the rest of the Warriors will run back, but the Titans have gotten the 2-for-1, and the backline from the Warriors is gone.
Keep your eyes on Cuvo. Ultimate is still down, but he can make an impact to try and steal it away. Fire Giant started up by the Tartarus Titans. You can see even damage across the board, but Cuvo spotted out on the ward on the tail end of the fight. Surely the Titans recognize that he is back there, but the Fire Giant down to a quarter health, and Benji to try and zone away Cuvo Fred. He wants to make the hero play, as well as the rest of his team. Fear No Evil, and the Warriors steal away the Fire Giant. Tartarus Titans come up empty-handed on the objective and may even lose one player in the midst of it. Neil Ma goes down because of the damage out of Paul, but trading 1 for the fire is worth it every day of the week for the Warriors.
Neil gets this enhanced fire giant rather, and the Warriors still breathe life in this best of 5. If the Titans were able to secure that EFG, I think the Warriors' hopes in this group would have been in a bad spot, but a big play there from Neil. 2-1. Shatters the walls and gets the EFG. And the Titans, I mean, their composition just has no tools to secure a fire giant. Just none. The Waxing Moon is your best damage option, and that isn't great.
Nika is just running down 3 of the Tartarus Titans, but he's got some backup waiting in the jungle. Cuvo Fred back with ult in just a few seconds, and Nika all by himself right now to try and fight against 4. Cuvo and Vote sitting way in the jungle. Benji leaps out of the cage, and Dardes is caught in the middle, and Layers is going to dive right down on him. Bat out of hell needs one more swoop to get the kill, but Cuvo picks up 1 and makes it an even trade.
Dardes has fallen, though, and that's going to be problems.
Double kill for Layers, and it's Nika on the run now because Layers is going to chase him out. Half health on the Odin as the Titans surge forward.
And that's huge. Now, those members, I don't even think they had EFG, but now the EFG siege from the Warriors is toasted, so is Nika.
Nika's got nowhere to go. Layers is catching every leap and every blink, and Paul is the one who puts him in the dirt. Neil, who had just respawned after the fight, is already surrounded by 4, and Cuvo stands by and watches as support is surrounded by 4 Titans.
No way for Neil to get out of this, right? I mean, he blocks him off nicely. Layers uses the beads, and you have to feel like Layers is going to be able to catch him eventually. As good as it felt to steal that EFG, now the Titans might be in a good spot anyways, even after losing that EFG. They're going down mid, but they don't have a wave and they don't have a hunter. They don't deal great damage to this Phoenix.
Cuvo Fred, the only to defend. Ultimate not up just yet, and Benji will make sure that Cuvo Fred doesn't put up a defense against this Phoenix, but they're not taking it down very quickly. It's going to be the only one that they can grab in the midst of this fight. Tartarus Titans, who lost the enhanced fire giant to the Warriors, turn the fight around and benefit themselves by picking up that mid Phoenix.
Yeah, that chase from the Warriors all the way down that right-hand side. I mean, they kill Cyclone pretty much right away. I mean, every priority ult goes his way. Cage on Cyclone. Apple on Cyclone. Fear No Evil on Cyclone. They all land it, and it combines to be a death for Cyclone Spin, but it just requires so much of investment in order to take one player down, and it's in such an advantageous position in the map. Look at how long it took the Titans to be able to kill Nika and Neil.
They have to chase them all the way down to the tier 2 and then around the tier 2 anyways. But because of where that fight takes place, it's possible for them to do so. If that fight was on a neutral objective or something like that, then it's a lot easier to just disengage and run away. But because they were so committed to the Titan side of the map, the Warriors just couldn't get away.
And aggro, it just blows my mind that we're 36 minutes into this game, and Paul has gone undying. Benji has only died one time himself on this Nike. These two players, it seems that they are the hardest two players, maybe even in the entire league, to really get a kill on, even despite all the big benefits that the Warriors have in these team fights. They just can't seem to get kills on these guys.
Yeah, they just can't. I mean, Nike in general, pretty hard to kill, but you've got an Odin cage and there's no Phantom and a Chang'e. Nika got one by fire, but no one else was there. Fred wasn't anywhere to be found. You know, you don't have a ROM snipe or anything like that to try and get on top of these backliners whenever they're caged. The Odin's been doing good control work, 1, 2, and 2 for Nika, but the cage follow-up hasn't necessarily been there.
Fire Giant buff is now officially gone. It's 1 minute till that one comes back up. And the Warriors, only able to steal it away, end up coming up at the net negative there by losing that mid Phoenix. They'll be able to push out the waves just fine. Not the worst Phoenix for them to lose, to try and go for another Fire Giant defense. But the Titans at full slots nearly across the board here are not quite looking for the fire just yet, not even really setting up around it. They may just be looking to shred some of these towers like Cyclone's do on this left side.
Yeah, it took Cyclone about 5 autos to kill that tier 2, and he doesn't even have an enhanced Fire Giant. So you can tell how critical this next FG fight is going to be. But I don't think the Titans can really afford to play super aggressive before that Fire Giant spawns. I think it's correct for them to be patient, wait for it to come up, play around that cooldown, and try and take the fight there and just use this mid lane as pressure for whenever that happens.
Now look what Cyclone's got sitting in his inventory, an Elixir of Power, 3,000 gold expended towards this one consumable, and maybe all leading up to this one final fight. Pyromancer goes down for the Oni Warriors. They're able to get a little bit more gold, but at this point, who cares about the gold? Because nearly everybody is 6-slotted across the board. Aurora's final item, a Divine Ruin, just to get some extra anti-heal towards his team. Neil, the only one who hasn't been able to pick up a 6th item just yet, but does have that upgraded Curse Stalk on both sides of the field.
Yeah, both pretty critical against the opposition. So Fire Giants now up. Tartarus Titans, again, don't have great secure. We saw it last time, and they also, their zone is kind of difficult to execute on. It requires Aurora to be able to step up and use that ultimate.
Benji steps forward, and out of the mist drops a couple members of the Warriors. Aurora now here eating a little bit of damage. It's being thrown out here by Vote. Benji again still sitting inside this lane, still trying to get some pressure on the minion waves and get things going. There's a huge stack of fire minion waves in mid that are being pushed up. Cuvo Fred has to rotate out just to try and deal with them.
But he's going to be able to pretty easily and still be close enough to affect this fight. Titans trying to just brute force their way down right. I don't know if this is really the call. I think that putting pressure back on this mid Phoenix may have been a better answer because Fred is going to be able to clear out all these fire waves.
Just Benji versus Nika right now inside the jungle, and that's giving the Titans a little bit of room to start poking out this tower. They dropped that one's health down fairly low. But the Titans, they're going to give up on the tier 2 tower instead and make their way back towards the fire. But look who's waiting right back behind him and clearing out those wards. It's Cuvo Fred.
And the mid Phoenix is up and no more fire waves and the wave is pushed. I mean, the Titans did not do a great job with that play. I think that pressuring mid with your fire wave, you know, gunning it down, threatening to end the game if they go for EFG is a way better call than grouping and trying to kill a tier 2 that doesn't really matter anyways. Like, it doesn't give you as much positional advantage because the tier 2 on right is way closer to the Fire Giant than mid Phoenix is. So if you could have at least backed them all the way to mid Phoenix, then it takes them longer to chase you out. Definitely a bit of an odd decision there from the Titans.
You know, we'll walk past the Riptide that Aurora sets up, and the Monolith will drop down as Aurora, well, maybe not. I thought Aurora had enough autos to get it, but it doesn't really matter. It does. At the end of the day, fall down. Layers does go back to base to pick up an item of his own. What will it be? It will be his own Elixir of Power to add a little bit more bang to his buck. Just the same as Cyclone Spin. It's Neil stepping up towards the Fire Giant pit to see where all the Titans are and get a little bit of ward vision on them.
Now, the only way that's pushed here for the Titans is on the left side, but it is pushed all the way to Phoenix. Theoretically, Layers could get over there and try and shove that because he should win the 1v1. There are not many characters that beat Hunbat's 1v1 in the late game, but Camazot's can potentially be one of them. I like this call. Send layers over, because oftentimes teams will be checking and paranoid like, hey, do we see Cyclone? Do we see the ADC? Do we see the ADC? He's the one that can solo it. Letting layers do it makes some sense.
And look, they sent 2 of the Warriors over to that left side, so they can't even try and pull
They
the
could
Fire
pinch him.
Giant away from the Titans, and maybe even Layers can try and go for a 1v1 up against Voda. Blink in, but Voda's got
See ya.
too much crit damage against Layers. Somehow he managed to squeak by, but how much further can he go? He gets a
That
little bit of heal back
lifesteal.
from the bats, and a second one to go through, but that's going to start up a fight. On the right-hand side, the 2v1 distraction by the jungler is buying the Titans a little bit of time,
Whoa.
and he almost kills Cuvo.
That was close. Layers used the ultimate, but so did Cuvo. Cuvo used Blink and ult. This should be a good fight now for the Titans.
Fire Giant started up. Benji and the rest of the team burning it down. But there's still 3 from the Warriors to try and defend against this. Benji instead will turn his sights toward Dardas and chase out the mid laner. It's a cage and a Sanctified Field drop on the tail end of the fight. 2 of them managed to make it out, but it's Paul just dealing damage right back at him.
Cyclone getting a little bit too low, just poked because of that Terra ultimate. Now he walks back into the fire, literally, and starts tanking FG. That's going to full reset. The Titans aren't able to do it. And I'm really surprised that the Titans aren't willing to take that fight on the FG and get that Fire Giant a little bit lower, because I know they got their last one stolen, but you know, it's 4v3. That's a pretty advantageous position for you to be in. I think you got to just not coin flip it, but actually commit a little bit harder there. And now you've got no Sanctified Field to work with.
Nika's on the left side of the map. The Titans pull it again. An ultimate out of Aurora to hold them out. Fear No Evil used to try and get the Fire Giant, but it's no good. Instead, it's Benji. Now zoning 2 away all by himself. Mo gets hit by the Waxing Moon, and Layers picks up Cubo Fred all of his own. The Titans push forward. Vote's able to make it out, but the same cannot be said for Neil Ma. He is being chunked down and will not make it out because Layers will pick him off.
Double kill for Layers, and Dardes could be next on the docket. Nika trying his best, but Mid Phoenix already under siege from the Oni minions.
Mid Phoenix and Right Phoenix under fire here by the Tartarus Titans. Some good defense out of Dardas for damage, but not enough to save the bird.
Mid Phoenix is going to be the same, already gone. This should be an easy end from here for the Titans. Probably just waiting on Cyclone Spin's Sanctified Field. That should be up any second now.
The minions help push down that Mid Phoenix, and they'll make their way towards the left-hand side. Just a few more seconds till Cyclone's ult comes back up. But there's no chance for this left bird to live out. It goes down quickly, and it's 30 seconds until Cuvo is back up. Nika jumped on Benji as the front line in a Sanctified Field to drop. Now the Titan under siege by the Tartarus Titans, and they're going to close this set out with Cyclone Spin taking out Nika, Layers taking out Boat. But the rest of the team taking out the last objective of the game for a clean 3-0 sweep.
Yeah, 3-0 sweep. Much better from the Warriors in that game. Obviously a lot more competitive. I really think that game hangs in the balance there with that play for Layers going left. The fact that he's able to handle the 2v1, gets out alive, sends them both back, gets big cooldowns from Cubo in particular, you've got to find a way to kill him. I know he's Camazotz. I know he's late game Kama, but they needed to find a way to take him down. The fact that Layers was able to do that created too much space on the right.
Strong fight at the Warriors, but at the end of the day, it is the Tartarus Titans who come up victorious. We're going to cut it to a break and then come back to the desk to close out our day.
The games just got more convincing as this set went on, and the Tartarus Titans maybe have their most convincing win in the late game, at least, here in game number 3. Good start to this one from the Oni Warriors. They make a great call around the Fire Giant. From that point on, though, the Tartarus Titans regained control and were able to take the game, take the set, and have now confirmed themselves in Phase 3 playoffs. And so it's a great look for this Tartarus Titans team here, Miff. And I think what we expected going into this set.
Yeah, I think that the Tartarus Titans were a heavy favorite coming into this one and can only continue to do so. But they didn't make it easy for themselves, Dave. Fire Giants went to the Oni Warriors. There were objective steals, objective sneaks, everything throughout this game that could have made it that much harder for the Tartarus Titans. And despite all of it, despite their stumbles, they come out ahead. That team fight was dirty. I was a sleeper on the Chang'e, and I should not have been.
All right, so we talked a little bit about both junglers here in this matchup, Miff. Here's a wild stat about Layers.
Please.
In the last 6 games, Layers has had double-digit kills in 3 of them.
Yep.
And in the other games...
Wait, how many total?
How many total kills?
Yeah, how many total kills in the last 6?
In the last 6 games,
I didn't mean to make you do
41,
math.
47 kills in the last 6 games.
That's a lot.
He has got 46 kills and 6 deaths in the last 6 games.
What?
He's gone undying in 3 of the last 6 games.
Yo, he might be good.
Yeah, Layers might be good at SMITE, I think so. This was a whole team win, though, from the Tartarus Titans. They draft themselves Oleron late on in the draft, Miff. We wondered how that would look. And just the combo that we saw. It was the Sanctified Field, the Waxing Moon from Paul. Really just set up some good team fights here for this Titans team.
Yeah, a lot of the time it was just space denial. There were a couple of engagements where Sanctified Field locks down individual targets, and oh my god, that's why he's got so many kills. That dude disappeared in front of him. There were a couple of engagements where he locked out a couple of targets with Sanctified Field, but for the most part it was, okay, we're doing an objective. I'm going to drop it here. Good luck fighting me. Oh, we're going to go into the Titan room. I'm going to drop it here. Good luck fighting me. It's just such a good space creation tool on a god that already has wild DPS.
Yeah, and this is such now a hard team. If you zoom out, you look at this Tartarus Titans team, it's such a hard team to figure out. Because you look at the compositions in game 1 and 2, and it's pretty telegraphed early. You see a Morgan locked in, and we're assuming a Cthulhu is going to come later, and that's exactly what happens. That happens again in game 2. And then the Oni Warriors throw a big change out there where you ban out Cthulhu, the Titans are in second picks, they choose not to, they ban out the Morgans. Yep. You have to have a whole different look at a team composition, and it is a very different look at a team composition with a Chang'e in mid, something that we have not seen the Titans team play all that much, and Oleron in there as well as a Camazotz, and they look just as good at it. This is a Titans team that I think is maybe one of the hardest in the league to draft against.
So versatile. They've got so many tools they can go towards. The Titans, I think, do look a little bit worse in Game 3 than they do in the first 2 because it's a draft they don't have nearly as much experience playing around. So my what-if brain is thinking, what if the Oni Warriors just decided to target it out a little bit earlier on? Because it felt like in Game 3, the Warriors were fighting back a lot more consistently around these neutral objectives. So I think it had that adaptation of dealing with the Morgan or the Cthulhu had come just a little bit sooner, we would be talking about a Game 4 potentially.
Absolutely could be. Aurora was at the forefront of the conversation all day long. The support for the Tartarus Titans looked great, and he joins me now for the post-game interview. Aurora, thanks for sitting down with me. Congrats on the 3-0 win. Confirmed now for the Phase 3 playoffs. I think the writing has been on the wall for a while. This is a team that's just playing with so much momentum. I was hard-pressed to find a world where you guys didn't make it through, but you get your second win. You guys are moving on into it. Do you feel a little extra weight off? You got one more set to play up against the Scarabs. Do you feel like you can relax a little bit going into that final game?
I don't know. We're just going to keep doing the same thing and try our best to win. That's it.
You feel like a relaxed team anyway. So, you're focused, but you don't let the moment get the best of you, and I think a lot of that leans into why you guys are so successful. I am surprised, and I think Miff and I were surprised going back and forth a little bit. You see Morgan locked in first, and we're assuming there's going to be a Cthulhu later on. Were you surprised that the Oni Warriors let you play Morgan plus Cthulhu in back-to-back games to start off the set?
I guess they probably thought they. Well, no, they did think that they had some strategy against it and they wanted to play against it, I assume, so they just ran it back. And, yeah.
All right. So that was Layers and Paul, I believe, who were walking by in the background. Does Layers have a big head about him now? I just told Miff he's got like 47 kills in the last 6 games. He's died like 6 times. The guy's playing out of his mind. Is his ego just left unchecked nowadays, or is he wrangled by you and the rest of the boys?
Nah, he's cool. His ego's not out of control at all. Yo, wait. One last thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
My friend wanted to say hi, D. Olsen. So.
What's your friend's name? I can.
Ryan.
Ryan, hey, nice to
aggro.
meet you.
And then
it's
the
aggro.
other thing is, did you see the Twitch chat about you earlier? It was making me laugh so hard in the first set.
Chat, I love you, but I don't read you.
Someone said you flipped off their grandma and docked on Atlanta. It was making me
Is that
laugh.
true?
No.
I was laughing so hard
not.
about that.
It wasn't me. I'm sorry, chat. It wasn't me. I love the rest of you, whoever was making up lies about me, not you.
Oh, Moswell
I'll
wants
come
a
find
shout
you
out from you too, Dielson.
Moswell, love you as well. Appreciate the shout out. Yeah, everyone, you can all get shout outs, and Aurora will be the one who feeds them to me moving forward. Appreciate you, Aurora. Congrats on the win. We'll see you in the Phase 3 playoffs. Before that, we'll see you tomorrow. I'll let you go join the rest of the team and walk around the kitchen, I guess.
Thanks.
All right, so shout-outs to Ryan and Moswell, and sorry to the grandma of Twitch chat. I guess that wasn't me, but if you thought it was me, I apologize there as well. Mifflin, please, dear God, get me out of this. Thank you. There we go, production. Group stages. Let's look at the standings here. No surprise, I think, at the tops of these relative groups. The Atlantis Leviathans on top of Group A at 2-0. They play the Valkyries this weekend. I imagine if the Leviathans keep playing the way that they are, they'll improve to 3-0. Now, Group B, again, this is where things are still interesting. Oni Warriors have one more set. That's up against the Olympus Bolts. That's the last set of the weekend for the Bolts as well. So our Scarabs and Titans will be playing tomorrow. And so, if tomorrow, our first game of the day, the Titans win, the Scarabs will drop to 1-2. That'll be their final standing. And then the Bolts and the Warriors will play, and if the Warriors win, all 3 teams will be 1-2. We'll move forward to head-to-head, to win-loss, things like that. So there is still a chance, depending on plus-minus, how all of that sort of stuff breaks down. I think the math works out where everyone can still find their way through. That said, it becomes a lot easier. If the Scarabs find a way to beat the Titans tomorrow, that'll be a win there for them. And then the Camelot Kings versus the Jade Dragons, Miff. Kind of give me some final thoughts on that matchup. You think that could be a close one over in Group A?
I think it's one of the more important ones. The Jade Dragons have been looking iffy recently. I don't think I'm making any news by putting that statement out there. They just have not been playing to the level that we expect of the Jade Dragons. The consistency isn't there. It feels like there's been some stylistic changes. The Camelot Kings have been kind of ironing things down, getting themselves ready for Worlds. So I think there's a lot of implications in that set. Great heat check for the Jade Dragons. I know they're one of the fan favorites. I'm definitely keeping my eyes on it.
Yeah, you got to do that. That'll be our second and final set of the day tomorrow. An action-packed day of SMITE on Saturday. We've got an action-packed couple of months of SMITE content ahead of us. Just announced, though, is the Finchmas charity stream that we will be doing on December 11th. Of course, in memory of our good friend and coworker, John Finch. We have so much exciting stuff, plenty of content to be done there that day. You don't want to miss it. Awesome charities will be receiving those benefits. And of course, we'll have some great stuff going on. December 11th, you do not want to miss that. Plenty of fun SMITE stuff coming up, including games later on this weekend, and then Finchmas on December 11th. Placements just around the corner, Worlds there as well. But this was a great way to start off our second weekend of the group stage. Make sure to tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll be kicking off day number 2 of week number 2 of Phase 3 groups here in Season 8 of the SPL. On behalf of myself, Mifflin, and all the other casters, everyone back in production, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Peach it.